Well, look, like I said, you really have become like a beloved figure in the community. I mean, I seldom have a client that doesn't know your name, and every I haven't met, I don't, and which is rare. I don't think I've met anybody that's had a bad word to say about you, which is, like I
Yeah,
said,
well,
very
that's
rare.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's funny. Sometimes I'll say something. People say, "Who's Geraldine Burns?" Because I see some stuff on the groups. I don't go on a lot. I feel like there's like a million other things to still be doing, and we're fighting stuff here in Massachusetts. But I try to
right.
stay quiet, and that's another thing with the groups that we could talk about. Like everybody feels like they have to throw in their opinion. I mean,
Yeah.
when somebody's suffering, listen to it. You don't have to. I was even thinking today of how it's changed so much since 1999.
Mhm.
I'm shocked at really how it is today.
God, I think it's changed a lot in just the last 5 years.
And
Right? Like
yeah,
even the fast last 5 years. And I go back to 2010, 11 to 12-ish is when I was doing my taper and everything. And back then there was almost no community that I knew of. Maybe it was a little more underground. But I mean, if you went to YouTube and stuff, all you saw was videos of people in horrific situations, crying,
yeah.
videotaping themselves. And I could almost not find any support group. I think I found Benzo buddies, I want to say. I think I found a few little resources, but they weren't like they were today. And yeah, it was scary. And so
Yeah.
I spent 6 months in bed, literally, watching, and I tell people, like, I'm a bit OCD, so I can ruminate better than anybody. I give me three monitors and I can ruminate on three different topics at one time. And I would sit there, I used to smoke cigarettes back then, and I would just chain smoke at the monitor, reading about heart conditions and receptor damage, and I just went down these rabbit holes. And I remember I would wake up some days, barely sleeping anyway, and I would just be in it. As soon as you opened your eyes, it was like, okay, here we go. And I'd sit on the computer and I would just research and research, and then it would get dark out. And then it would be like 2 in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, I have sat here for 16 hours researching things, and like I was just obsessed with it. And then I got better and I came back, several years or some years later, probably around 2014, 15, something like that. And there was a big community. It just sort of kept growing and growing. And even then it was still a lot of, like, the groups were still very doom and gloom. It was a lot of, like, you
Yeah.
would go into a group and it would just be all capital letters, like, I want to die, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh. And so I subscribed to a bunch of them just to kind of get my feelers out there of what was going on. And I would be on, like, Facebook, and I would just scroll through and I would see these posts come up over and over again. And I'm years removed, and I didn't think I realized at the time I still had like a trauma response to all this stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So I was sort
there's
of like,
definitely, yeah.
yeah, right. So I was sort of like thinking I was a lot better than I was, and I think I was, like, far as like receptors and that type of stuff. But the trauma was there. So every time this stuff would pop up in my feed, I would literally feel like a sinking feeling in me. I was like, oh, over. And I think, God, I'm not even going through this again. If I was in the middle of this and I kept seeing this, it's like it's just a drop of cortisol, a drop of adrenaline every single time
Hmm.
you see one of those posts. So I
Right.
was a little bit critical. I was probably a lot of bit critical about some of the groups. I was like telling people, like, I mean, I know they mean well, but God, look at what you're doing. If you're sitting on some of these groups, you're telling your limbic system, I'm still in trauma. You know,
Exactly. Well, years ago when there was nothing and I'm searching the internet, my kid's a little, I don't know what I'm doing. And the first one, my son actually finds it was CETA. And so I called over to, which was Council for Involuntary Tranquilizer Addiction. Then they started to add in um, antidepressants. But I was fortunate back then to be able to talk to Pam Armstrong, who ran that at the time, Paul Entwistle, who actually was like her administrator, Heather Ashton, Dr. Reg Pert. I mean, these are some of the main players that were over there. Una Corbett, and then, of course, Val Stevens that ran Bristol Tranquilizer Group at the time. And I'll tell you this. So, one time when somebody was very sick, and Val used to deal with the worst of the worst. So she got the worst of the worst people, even though you could call over to Bristol and talk to people. And when she retired, I'm thinking, oh, I got to call Val. So I called to Bristol. I said, oh, it's Geraldine calling from the United States. They gave me her number because they knew me. And when I called Val to ask her a question, she stopped me in my tracks. She said, Geraldine, anytime you want to come over here, I run a bed and breakfast now, you come. But everybody says I look 20 years younger since I walked away. I will never discuss benzos again. And
Right.
she wouldn't. So we just talked socially. And I thought, yeah, she's did it for 20 plus years and walked away.
Yeah.
So it does affect us constantly. And when I talk to somebody, you have to almost remember what you went through when you're talking to them, say, yes, I went through that, and you feel it. And it's a lot,
Yeah.
it is a lot. And then that the trauma, I always say, people ask me if I'm healed, I say, well, I'm healed, but I'm always going to want to feel safe. I'm always going to be in control. I
Hmm.
mean, I have become a control freak as far as my health, what I do, and I still suffer the trauma. I think a
Right.
lot of us, you're good, but you remember this. Like I have my certain little things, in the trauma. I mean,
Right.
you trusted yourself. I went into the hospital to have a baby and I walk out with Ativan. I didn't really take it, but then I had a uterine infection. Had I just been given an antibiotic, we wouldn't be sitting here talking.
Right.
And it turned my
Right.
life upside down.
Right. No, you're right. And I've been coaching for some years, and like I've heard so many stories from around the world, and I just call it the archetypal story because they're all the same. It's somebody, trusted somebody who should have known better, and then
Absolutely.
the bottom fell out at some point. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the story over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. And blame the patient. Always blame the patient. It's going on everywhere. And I will say the one thing Heather Ashton used to say to me is, Geraldine, the multi-drugging coming out of the United States and Canada, she had not seen the likes of it. When she was actively seeing, she was shocked at people contacting her. There was a time you could write to her and she would actually write back a long letter of what she thought. And then she started to send people to me. But it really is pretty sad that you could go into a doctor and you start having issues, and then hey, we're going to give you another drug and another drug. And it's, I mean, I
Right.
was given, thank God admin was my concept, and I had a reaction to everything this doctor tried to give me. And when I was getting healthier, I saw like a holistic nutritionist at one point in like 1992, let's say. Uh, Ollie, he changed my diet and gave me maybe two or three supplements. Never said it was the drug, so I didn't understand it. And as I'm eating a clean diet, because when you're on the drugs, you kind of crave salty, sweet, salty, sweet. And anyway, and I'm eating healthy. I don't cheat. I'm doing everything. I actually go back to work part time. And 7 months later, and I see the doctor because still needed the prescription a little bit. I don't even understand weaning, but I'm getting off, and I don't even feel a thing. How crazy is that? And she saw that I lost the drug weight. I'm literally back to what I was after having my kids, and she says diet and nutrition have nothing to do with your health. And I tell her about this guy, how he helps other people. She said, oh, no, no, that diet and nutrition have nothing to do with health. You need to take Ativan for the rest of your life. And I said to her, so I can have sugar again? She said, absolutely. And I always say I sold my soul for sugar.
Yeah.
Out of work I went. I could have been, almost back and back on the drugs. How stupid. I still didn't understand it, that a drug was making me sick. Didn't get it.
Right. 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 And that's a good point too, because there is such a discord in mental health in general that, my uncle was a psychiatrist. So I had so many conversations, at Thanksgiving and just sitting around a fire in the backyard, talking to this guy about everything, picking his brain. And they really do just buy into this model of chemical, and so him and
Yeah.
I would go back and forth, and he was a bit of a Buddhist, and I had a pretty heavy background in Zen and meditation, and so we would go back and forth, and he said, well, it's a chemical problem and you need chemicals. This sounds, but what about the whole field of psychology? What about what happened and what we did before big pharma came? You're just throwing all that history away. What about all of that? Well, he would kind of drone on, and then I said, what about, I said, listen, I had an experience in practice in meditation, where I came from a lot of trauma, broken home, violent home, drugs, alcohol, Jerry Springer, you know what I mean? Really bad background. And I said, I got really depressed, really anxious, wasn't sleeping, PTSD, all kinds of stuff. I should have been a statistic. I should have been in jail or a drug addict or an
Mhm.
alcoholic. And I said, I found meditation and I started meditating. And I said, in the course of 6 months of really doing it, really dedicating myself to it, I said, it transformed me. My anxiety was almost non existent. My depression was almost non existent. I slept better. I had more peace, I had more love, I had more creativity, I had better relationships. I went back to college, I went to school, and I dropped out after somebody had tried to kill me in my when I was 15. I was a victim of a hate crime, hence all
Oh,
this crazy background stuff. So I didn't even get my GED. I mean, I literally was I had a beginning of basically essentially an eighth grade education, and I dropped out. So I had all this baggage of like low self-esteem and low education and low self-worth and low self-efficacy, and meditation just changed me. It just changed my chemistry. I said, "So what do you say about that?" This is my uncle, and he says, "Well, yeah, if you change your thoughts long enough, you can change the behaviors, you'll change the chemistry. It is a continuum." I said, "Oh, okay." He said,
yeah,
"But that's really hard to do." I said, "That's fair enough. It's really hard to do. You know what else is hard to do is when you're diabetic and you're, or something to that effect, and you've got to lose weight to, change your diet or your life. Like a lot of things are hard to do, but are they doable? Because you're
right.
preaching a model that suggests that it's not doable. Like type 1 diabetes doesn't matter what you can be 90 pounds, doesn't matter. Right. But type 2 is, well, that's a different scenario. So we can't
Mhm.
treat all of this like it's type 1 diabetes. It's not the case.
Right.
So that was really disheartening. So me and him would go back and forth. And I said, "Well, why do you do it? Why?" And he said, if people come to me, Dave, they want a prescription. They expect to leave with a script." And he said it so matter of factly, just like if you go to a car dealership, damn it, they sell you a car. What do you have me do? And I was like, well, I mean, I kind of left me stunned. I was like, the only thing I could think of was, well, refer them to somebody. You know what I mean? If you got
Right.
someone going through a life transition, like a divorce or death or something, maybe they don't, I've got clients that were put on benzos now for 15 years, fighting for their life, and they got put on them because they were having some test anxiety in college. Are
Right.
you serious?
There were a
Everybody
lot
has.
in my original group from originally just from college. Crazy that and then years go by. I know it's when we went to the state house one time to testify. I brought with me 3 pages of reasons. I think Jocelyn had put it together. Why were you put on a benzo? So here we have 3 pages of the least, which was anxiety. It was reaction to other drugs, had the flu too long, lost too much weight. I'm trying to think. I mean, I did a podcast once on called Medical Prescribers Listen to Me, and I listed all the reasons people got put on, and then all of a sudden your world changes and we have mental issues. Like it's like just so wrong. And then I listed all the books or places you could go to listen to, and they need to start taking some responsibility because here I am in Boston. Everybody would say to me, especially when I was reaching out to other countries like Sweden. Sweden, years ago, they had a website, which they don't have anymore, that Doug Zetterberg and Johnny Sands ran, where they had a lot of the scientific information. And they're like, well, you're in Boston. They must know in the United States in Boston. I'm like, not really, because I was calling Mass General, Brigham and Women's, trying to talk to these doctors, and they were all shutting me down, saying, no, nothing wrong with these drugs. Or as I'm chasing the mysterious illness for 10 years, they're all telling me I would question the Ativan. And they would say it's perfectly safe, harmless, non addictive. That's not your issue.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know if you know, my big thing that I'm very upset about is for women being put on these drugs, especially young girls, because we now know, in fact, they knew 1 year after the drugs hit the market, the effect it has on a woman's menstrual cycle. The first year we spoke in at the State House, just about every woman there had either lost her period, had multiple DNCs, or hysterectomy. Now I'm one that I had a hysterectomy by 41. And it's even in my records with the doctor. Isn't that interesting? She's actually writing
Yeah.
it down. When I'm saying to her, I had perfect periods my whole life. Like cramp, might have had one here and there. Perfect periods. As I'm on Ativan, I go to bleeding a full 5 days to 7 days to 9 days to 15 days. I mean, to the point in the end, I'm bleeding 3 weeks out of the month. It's bad. So by
Wow.
41, I have a hysterectomy. And when I woke up, I asked what was wrong with my uterus, and to hear it was in perfect condition was shocking. Now I still don't know it's the Ativan. 6 months later, I go to meet my new gynecologist, and I say the same line to her that I said to every doctor. I take this Ativan. I can't be without it. She turned around with horror and she said, "You're on one of the most addictive drugs ever made." Now, granted, we don't like to hear the word addictive, Could she have said dependent? It didn't matter. But the mysterious illness I was chasing, which I knew in my heart was the Ativan, there it comes. But she didn't know how to get me off. She wrote out a thing to have me off in 2 weeks. And I kind of knew that would kill me. So I searched for information, and I got one little book that, I came off in 4 months. 3 milligrams in 4 months after being on a little shy of 10 years was pretty painful. As
Wow.
Dr. Pert always says, let's just consider that a cold turkey withdrawal. But we see women today, as they get off of a benzo, their periods either come back if they lost it. One girl, it took her 3 years to get it back. She's been able to have one child. Another one, she got it back. I was shocked she got it back in 13 months. And the ones who are bleeding with the multiple D&Cs when they get off go back to a regular period. So
Hmm.
why isn't anyone paying attention to that? So I called the HERS Foundation, which is all about to help save women from having hysterectomies, to talk to them about this. This was years ago, and I should probably try again. They didn't want to hear it. But when I'm in at the State House, and as I've said to my son when we're in there, because he's the legal counsel for the representative that filed the bill, I said, you know what? One of these years, I am going to say, if a man's testicles shriveled up and had to be removed, they would have been looking at these drugs. They would have had them immediately. They would have been used the way they were supposed to be used. But because it's us, the hysterectomy, it's in our
Right.
heads,
Right.
and I wanted more children. I had the chance to taper, and sometimes even after all these years, I get very upset and I'll cry to think how many of the girls in the group have have lost the chance to have a baby. And I don't like to say anybody's aged out, because they still can, but it is wrong. No one's looking at
Yeah.
that aspect. So one of the first years when the doctors, as we call them, I don't like to swear when I do anything, but we call them the Harvard assholes, because they really came in that first year and they just were like, these are safer than aspirin, blah, blah, blah. We're like, you're in a room of people that have been harmed. And the things they were saying were shocking. And they wouldn't even stay and listen to, the only story they ever heard was mine. And
Mm.
then they'd leave. They were so arrogant. And I called up one of them afterwards, because they're like, well, there's no scientific information. So I brought up the information about, the White Law article about, it affecting a woman's menstrual cycle. I brought up the article on dementia with Harvard's own article that came out, and it's as if you're not even talking. Oh, no, 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 no. That can't be true,
Right.
we've seen, actually, the lawyer I used to sue my doctor, he had a case of a woman diagnosed with dementia, and when they got her off of Xanax, she's as clear as a bell. So
Right.
it clearly,
Hmm.
my own friend, I did a podcast with my friend who's been on benzos for 40 years. And in the end, I knew it was benzos hurting her all those years, but I had to be very cautious with her, because she would never tell me what she was on. I actually could tell until finally she calls me and she's falling so much and she's got concussions, and we finally talk, and because she can't drive, she's like, can you take me to my appointment? So I start taking her to her neurologist, that neurologist, and finally her doctor says, I do believe it's, she's sick from the drugs, but I don't know how to get her off, and gave us carte blanche to just help her get off. So, she's doing, I don't let her on the groups. I'm
Right.
like, I don't want you to hear a bad thing. And again, would I like her to eat better? Sure, but she's just doing okay. And
Yeah.
weaning, she was on 3 milligrams of Klonopin, 150 of her antidepressant, and she's not being influenced. And down to, I think, 1 milligram of Klonopin now, and she's doing more and functioning better and
Right.
clearer. It's amazing.
Yeah. I love everything you're saying because when I say these things, I sound like the crazy man out constantly. And I tell people, I say, my clients especially, because they live in a bubble with these groups and little,
Mhm.
and it's a decent sized community, but it's small. And I say, look, a lot of what you see in the groups and a lot of what you read and all the boogeymen, I work with people, thousands of probably at this point from all around the world. And I'll tell you, it's not a fair representation what you see in those groups. It's a bit of the outliers, and it's a lot of like paranoia and fear, and you can't eat mayonnaise, and if you, oh my god, if you have a sip
Oh, yeah.
of Sprite you're going to die. Like there's all these kind of things. And I say I don't see that. Like I'm not saying those things don't exist. I'm just saying when you get on those groups, it paints a picture of oh my God, this is all going to happen to me. And it's not the case. So
Right.
even like the dementia, I just had someone write me yesterday about that. And they get completely, and just the fear of dementia is enough to put someone in a horrific setback or a
Absolutely.
wave. And I said,
Right.
guys, I trust me, I've dove so damn deep into this. I said, the jury's out on a certain level of this. And I said, correlation isn't always causality. So I love the fact that you said that there's dementia symptoms. You could get a dementia diagnosis, then come off the drug and be cleared. Because that's exactly the kind of
Absolutely
thing I'm
clear.
talking about. You
If
know,
you could
that's
see my friend, I mean, because her mother did have dementia, and she's like, it's going to happen to me. I go, no, we're going to make some changes, and everything is just kept. She got a dog. I mean, everything is just, she's outside, she's doing stuff. She's doing more with her sisters than she's done in years.
right.
And so she did take a peek one day. She said, oh, I looked online. I saw some stuff. You're right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
never going on again. I
Yeah.
go, exactly. Like, we go forward, you don't want to take anybody else's pain. And I'm
Right.
not saying there are people suffering, but when I turned my group over to somebody else, I never even, like, when you start a group years ago, and again, we all know I'm bad technologically wise, I'm like hitting buttons, how do you do this? And start the group. Never did I think there would come a day when there'd be fighting. Never did I think there'd be a day when just these horrible things that would happen, because we were so small when we started with 24 people, then got to 100, 200, up to 4,000 back then, before I went on to do other stuff. And you could have people's phone numbers, and you could, like, even when I was having a bad day, I didn't write it on there. I mean, I didn't want to influence anybody else, but I
Right.
knew, okay, I want to hear positive stuff. And that's how this all started. When I started calling other countries, it was because they had groups. Give me some people that recovered. All I need to know is one person recovered, and I'll keep going.
Right.
That's what I wanted. Give me constant hope. Hope and distraction are free. We need to be distracted. So, whatever it's going to
Right.
be. I mean, I was so agoraphobic. It was hard for me to do anything. And I'm like the most outgoing person. I worked in human resources. Talk about us. I got paid to be social, and I knew probably every employee in the place. And then I'm locked in my house. Like, a drug did that to me.
Right.
Crazy. But I went out and I started a garden so I could at least be out in the air, working in the dirt. And I'm thinking, well, if I die out here, they'll find me. I mean, that's how sick you
Yeah.
think your body is, but you're
Yep.
not going to die. When people say I'm going to die, I'm like, you're just going to think you will, but you're
Right.
not going to,
Right.
like, oh, I'm not sleeping. Will that kill me? I said, no, no one's died from not sleeping. I think the longest I went not sleeping was 2 weeks, not even a wink.
Yeah.
I'm still here,
Right. Right. Yep. Yep.
So you need to
100%.
calm people down. The best thing we can do is, like, again, when I started the first group, and I think anyone who starts a group, is we are trying to encourage people. We don't want to scare them. It's constant encouragement in knowing that you want to be the cheerleader. They're running the marathon, and we're there along the race to tell them to keep going. As much as that marathon is hard,
Right.
keep going, and then you're going to win the race.
Right.
And, even Shirley Trickett, who wrote one of the first Benzo books, she said, when you get to be years out, let's start looking at something. So
Right.
we do know a few people have had Lyme, or thyroid, and I forget what the third one she always said. But I remember somebody in the group, she couldn't get off the soap, she was so sick. And there's that, what's called the Wilson syndrome, where they do thyroid based on body temperature. And there
Mhm.
was somebody right near her house. She went, she did the supplements for that, and she said, I'm 200% better. So there was something a little, I think,
Mhm.
by blood, it isn't always accurate. I know
Right.
the Broder Bonds organization, they don't believe in the way that the blood tests are today. They go by symptoms, and they're, again, big into body temperature. If you are like below, first morning temperature, if you're below 98.6, if you have low body temperature, to them, they treat it based on that. Have you ever looked
Right.
into that?
A little bit. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about there. You
yeah,
yeah, so I mean there's definitely a lot of things. I mean there's so much we don't know still
right.
because no one's researching it really. No one's paying attention to
No,
it. But one thing I'm damn sure of, and it's a hill I'll die on, so to speak, is the power of the nocebo effect, the power of our minds going through this. I tell people, we use GABA because in the community it's all about GABA, GABA A receptor, GABA, GABA, GABA. I said, well, it's a little more intricate than that. So if your cortisol levels rise, if your adrenaline levels rise, if your stress levels rise, your benzo, it can only do so much. So you're going to have to increase the dose, but then you'll panic and say, it's not working anymore. It's like, maybe that does happen. Or is it that there's other external factors that are rising? But the scariest thing in that situation is if you, I mean, if you look at it and go, well, I did have a death in the family and the house flooded and the car broke down and this and that, maybe it's a really tough time. And so the benzo can only do so much, like a crutch. You know what I mean? The
Yeah,
more weight you put on it, it doesn't adapt to that. It eventually says, like, I can handle 200 pounds. That's it. And it'll break. So I said, if you look at it under that lens, then it makes sense to kind of breathe, see if you can bring down the stressors, and see if and lo and behold, the benzo suddenly seems to be working and they're doing better. But if you start
yeah.
to panic and you say, oh my God, it stopped working. Oh no, now I'm going to be in protracted. I'm going to go into acute. I'm going to die. I'm going to lose everything. And you start to panic and you panic. And the more you panic, the more you ruminate. And we know
Absolutely.
the more
The
you
panic
ruminate,
factor is so bad lately
right?
that something like I've never seen. I've never seen. I mean, I would hate to even say that somebody showed me what somebody wrote to them the other day, and I thought, get out of this, whatever groups you're in, get out. Don't ever go back there and look again,
Yep.
because that just put her into a tailspin.
100%.
I'm like, does this person realize they could be sued for what they just told you to go do? Like, and
100%.
tells her in the end, delete this. That's how bad what she wrote to this other
Mm.
girl was. I was beyond shocked. In all these years, I've never seen the likes of it,
Yeah, it's
so
incredible. I started a group called Life After Benzos, which I probably should have chose a better name because then a lot of people didn't come because they thought it was for people after benzos. And I said, no, it's just a gesture that there is life after benzos,
there is life. Yeah.
And I said, let's do something different because the VMF and these little veteran organizations around every city where veterans will go and they just want to be around each other. And they'll have little restaurants or little hangout spots. I said, but if you go to these places, you don't walk in, there's a bunch of soldiers sitting there, talking about their war stories, showing each other's their wounds. It's not that. I said they just want to be around their kind of people. And they'll sit there, they'll watch the game, they might have a beer, they'll eat dinner, they'll play cards or bingo or whatever. It's just there's some kind of comfortability of being around people that have gone through the war you've gone through,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. In fact, when I was in Florida, not this last time, I really couldn't leave this last time, but the year before, at that point, there were, I think, five of us in the area at the time. So we were trying to get all of us together, which would have been so much fun.
Yeah.
So I think one, two, three of them were in Fort Lauderdale. I was down in West Palm Beach. And I think, I don't, we would try to get, so there were a bunch of us. One, the phone was off, couldn't reach him. The other one, so the rain started coming. She's like, oh no, I can't really drive in the rain. So anyway, but I have seen them when I'm down there, and there's that camaraderie, which is amazing. So you
Yeah.
do talk a little bit about Benzos, and then it's just kind of the laughter of,
Yeah.
what you go through,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just, you meet somebody like that. We've had a lot of people here for dinner when they're in the Boston area and whatnot. And of course, when everybody's in at the State House, here you are. You are in a room of Benzo people. I mean, talk about amazing. And the last time that they were all together, I had to leave because my husband was having immunotherapy at the time. So they were all going out to lunch and I missed it. And I'm so sorry I missed that. But like, we literally, by the time we left in traffic in Boston, we made it just in time to get to his appointment. But you could see the camaraderie. In fact, it's
Yeah.
in Holly's film as prescribed when they're all together having lunch. And
Right.
a lot of them some that came had never been around another Benzo person, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
it's wonderful, and it gives hope to others.
Yeah, it does. It's and I totally agree. And so I started this group and I was like, let's just not talk about symptoms. Let's not
Hmm.
talk. I mean, there's so much good information out there at this point. There's many coaches. There's the Benzo Information Coalition. There's big groups and support and forums and blogs and documentaries and movies. And I mean, we've got enough information. I don't think anybody's like going, how do I taper? We know how to taper now. We know what to do. We know
Right.
what to expect. But I said, maybe it's just we'll try something different. Let's run an experiment and let's all just post positive things. If you're working in the garden today, if you got in a couple extra steps in movement, if you're having a good window or just if you've healed, like let's just see if that catches on. And it's,
Mhm.
we've got like a few hundred people now, and for the most part, it's really stayed that way. But
Good.
one thing and I think I can see the momentum of positivity because you are what you surround yourself with. And I said, you're in a situation, like I started to say earlier, like GABA helps, lull down that limbic system. It's what we use to access that parasympathetic. But if you can bring down the adrenaline, the cortisol, and the fear factors, then the GABA doesn't have to work so hard. So you can kind of meet it
Mhm.
in the middle there, right? It's not all GABA. We can sort of, and I said, if you have this situation where your limbic system, your fight or flight center is living in a state of basically, perceiving you as, sitting there in the water in the ocean at night, surrounded by sharks, it's never gonna the hyper arousal that it's creating for you to keep you alive in that fight or flight mode, which is going to exacerbate all the symptoms. As long as you keep saying I'm in the water with sharks, it's not going to quiet. It will not let you sleep. It will
Yeah.
not put it down. And you could curse it, but really that's what evolution designed it to do. It's trying to save your life. The problem is, a million years ago we didn't have benzos. So the limbic system doesn't know what a benzo is. It's like a boogeyman. What does that mean? It's like fearing insomnia, not sleeping. What does that mean? Or fearing your heart to stop beating or to stop breathing. The limbic system is not equipped, I don't think, for that. So my message has always been just try to stay positive, focus on what you can do, and avoid all of that fear stuff because you're in a
Right.
situation. Talk about the power of suggestion. I don't think there's any situation on the planet that I can think of, and I've went to school for over 10 years in clinical psychology, and I can't think of any situation where the limbic system or the nervous system is so susceptible to the power of suggestion. You know what
Right.
I mean? The power of the placebo effect or the nocebo effect. The
Right.
nocebo is if I tell you, I give you a sugar pill. I don't tell you it's a sugar pill, but I say, hey, this could help you sleep, or it could make you really anxious or nauseous or give you a headache or indigestion. And then boom, you manifest all those things. And one message I've been really hammering on, is because people don't want to be gaslit. And I think when you start to go down this trail, they start to hear, well, that's what my doctor said. It's like, no, no, no. Your doctor said it was your pre-existing and it couldn't be the best. It's a whole nother scenario. What I'm saying now is you're in a very, very vulnerable situation with your limbic system, and you simply cannot handle these type of things. So if somebody
Right.
comes to you on a forum and says, Betty, she was 6 months off and then she got worse. No matter where you are now, you're hearing that. You're going, oh my
That's
God.
right.
Okay. So in
Yeah.
other words, in the limbic system is hearing, Betty was floating in the water. She got to shore, but then a wave knocked her back into the water and then sharks got her. So now that's a possibility. And it's like,
Mhm.
how the hell are you going to lull that down? And it's gotten to the point where I know I sound mad to some people where I say, there's all these benzo boogeymen, and there's a lot of reality out there of histamines, kindling, akathisia, a lot of that stuff. I said, but in all my work, the number one thing that I tell you people that they have to fear, that's a real legit thing, is fear itself at this point. It's a legit rumination, that obsessiveness to keep looking up and I mean, rubberneck. Like we're designed that
Yeah.
way to just sort of
Right.
like an addiction. We have to just sit there and go, oh, Sally didn't hear. And did you hear about? And so I have these people in my group, and there'll be 100 posts on something positive. Look at so and so. She got better and she got better. And one person that didn't. And we all go, what about him? And
Mhm.
then that person becomes greater than 100 success stories.
Right.
Right. And so you realize that and you go, guys, there is no room for negativity. There just isn't. In my far as I'm concerned, we have to avoid that as much as humanly
Yeah.
possible.
Well, a good example is that there were two women in the Benzer groups, and they were both so sick, and I've now been able to interview both of them. Both so sick that people don't even want to talk to them, and they're so sick, but they find each other. And so they have each other to talk to. They are so ill. I just did Austin's story that just went out, and I did Terrence before. So these are two people that you think are never going to heal. So if they listen to negativity, but what they did, and it really is true about fear. So they were, working with the ministry about releasing fear. Fear, and as one did supplements and functional medicine, the other one did not. But what they did the day, because one would go into almost like anaphylactic shock. This is how ill. So we understand how ill people are. But when you are so locked up in fear, so they would be on the phone together. All right, let's today try to eat a strawberry. And they would relax. let the fear go and try to eat that strawberry. They both got healthy. One with no supplements, one went on to have 4 more children, and the other one went on to have a beautiful life. So interesting letting that fear go. So one was like me. Again, her and I did functional medicine. We understood the tests that they used to do back then, which I wish somebody would do it today. But you know what? You don't even have to pay for these expensive tests to understand phase one, phase two of the liver. Why can some get sick the minute they take something and another one can, or somebody's healing a little quicker? So kind of there are telltale signs, you know. One of mine, I'll ask somebody, when you were younger, could you drink alcohol, or did you get drunk easily? Oh, I got drunk very easily. You know, when you were younger, could you take medicine? Oh no, I always got sick right away. Well, there's somebody most likely genetically born with poor liver function. How's that? That's free than
Right.
paying all that. So, and I don't believe in doing anything to clean your liver. I do believe in, if again, you can have a lousy diet and still get better. And one of the examples I like to give, there were 2 people I thought would die. I've never thought anybody would die through this, except for 2. One even reacted to drinking water. And he didn't eat a meticulous diet, and he got better faster than most people,
Mm.
shockingly,
Right.
and went on to be healthy and donate a kidney to his son, and
Oh,
was
wow.
very careful what he, when giving medication, when he donated his kidney. So he kind of joked and said, you know, hey, no benzos. They're like, why? He goes, well, you know, I just kind of had a paradoxical reaction. And
Hmm.
I did the same thing. When I fell back about 8 years ago, broke my pelvis, and I thought, oh, one of my fears, never to be in an ambulance. And don't put me in a situation where I thought I broke my hip, but thank God I broke my pelvis. And they want to give me pain meds. And I'm like, you
Right.
know, yeah, no, I'm okay with that. And they're like, you don't want a pain med? I'm like, no, I'm fine. They're like, why
Right.
not? I said, look, even when I was younger, you know, I was one of those, I couldn't drink, you know, I just prefer not to. So he kind of whispers to my husband, oh, she's going to be hurting tomorrow. Said to my husband, take a prescription, whatever the lowest is, we just won't fill it. So they don't think I'm crazy. And then I said to them, I'll take an ibuprofen. And I took an ibuprofen just to get out. And they did have to help me, you know, before I left. And sure enough, I mean, it was painful. And my sister was doing pain management for a living, and she would call me every day and say, "You have to take pain meds in order to heal. You have to." I go, "Not doing it." I mean, I went through benzo withdrawal. I'm like, if I said this is nothing. Everybody say, "What's your pain level?" Like 1 to 10. I'm like, I don't know, maybe a 15. I'll take the pain. I can do that. I want my body to heal. I did homeopathy. I got a biomat. I got a neurolumin, and I did everything to help me heal. And the therapist that came to help teach me how to walk, she's like, you're healing faster than any of my patients. And I told her what I was doing. She's like, keep doing it. She says, because some of them, like, didn't even break as bad as you. And my sister, who's a nurse, does pain meds. She broke her pelvis 4 years before me. She went back to work on meds, one crutch, 3 months later. And I'm 6 weeks later. I am walking, no crutch, no anything. And I
Right.
think that was the difference. I didn't drug my body. And I'm not telling people to do that. That was my choice, you
Right.
know. I just wasn't going to do it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I had my teeth kind of got a little bit bad going through this because I was sitting in bed and I was eating, like you said, sugar. I was
Yeah.
I was like a
We crave
fly.
it.
Yeah, I was just eating dark chocolate every night, and that's all I
Yeah.
would eat. And it's kind of a funny side story there because I would fall asleep with the chocolate in my mouth, these little Dove chocolates. And I remember
Yeah.
I fell asleep one night with it and I woke up in the morning. I say in the morning, I barely slept. It might have been a few hours later. I woke up and I went to the
Chocolate down
bathroom.
your mouth.
Yeah, I walked by the mirror and I looked back at it and I thought it was dried up blood. Oh my
Oh,
God, I thought I was about to have a heart attack. I was like,
yeah.
because I had this heart fear, this heart
Yeah.
phobia I had developed. I had a lot of
Oh, big
POTS,
heart
right?
fear. Big heart fear.
I thought, oh
Yeah.
my God, my I had some internal bleeding and my mouth filled up with blood. Your mind is going through
You're
that.
so fragile during that.
It's so fast. Like
Yeah.
that's what's so crazy is how how fast my mind just in a split second of looking at that mirror. I had 3 different narratives going at once. It was a heart attack, it was a stroke, it was some kind of and I just went. It's just so fascinating how fast you can go down a rabbit
Yeah.
hole just
Yeah.
like that.
Oh.
And then I
Yeah, you
looked
got
and
to
I
stay
went,
away from that. Yeah.
it's
But you know,
shocking.
interesting you mentioned the teeth because I tell people now, if you're going to go through benzo withdrawal, I would say get a retainer. My teeth moved so much, not
Mhm.
while I was on, maybe a speck while I was on, but coming off. In fact, I'm doing Invisalign now, and I did back in 2015. I actually had braces put on. I thought I researched everything. I had braces as a kid, didn't have a problem. She put braces on. All of a sudden, I'm sick again. So 10 days later, I go back to her and she said, "Oh, well, did you have to always have gold jewelry? Did you react to it?" And I'm like, "Yes." And she said, "I had nickel wires in my mouth." I actually wrote to two benzo people, one that was a dentist and one that was a chiropractor, and both said, "What's the metal in your mouth? Go back and find out." And it was nickel wires, which I was highly allergic to. So off they come, and I was petrified to, and I did functional medicine again just to leach the nickel out of my body. But as soon as they came out, I was 50% better. And it's
Yeah.
not that I couldn't function. You know, you don't feel well
Right.
from it. And so I tell people now, I would put a retainer in. Just they're cheap. Just get
Right.
something to hold your teeth. So I showed my orthodontist a picture of myself, let's say, prior to coming off the benzo, and she goes, "Well, what happened to your teeth?" That they had moved so much.
Yeah.
One tooth was actually behind two others, and the front teeth. I mean, I didn't smile at my daughter's wedding, but I smiled at my son's wedding. It's like,
Yeah.
and that's just something I want to do for myself after all these years.
Yeah.
That's just one more thing Benzo's
Yeah.
changed in me that I'm like, you know what? I'm putting it back.
Yeah.
So many people, I've actually seen people say, "Oh, my teeth, my teeth," and they do move. They
Yeah.
actually do move because there are five ways at benzos are used. One is muscle relaxant. So think when you're coming off and muscles are twitching and this is happening, and like you said, your heart. I mean,
Yeah.
my last tachycardia attack was 1 year off the drug, so I had big heart fears. But you know what? I was off sugar for a long time. I've never had a problem since, and I do
Yeah.
have sugar now and then. I do.
Yeah. I feel
I'm
you
just
on
not
the
been crazy with it.
right, right. Me too. Um, I feel you on that because now I'm trying to play catch up with a lot of my teeth, and I want to do the Invisalign because I did the same thing and I would grind them all night. It would
Yeah.
like just rock and grind and grind. I'd wake up,
Yep.
my jaws would be hurting and my
Yeah.
teeth would
Yeah.
ache, you know.
Yeah.
But I was also eating a lot of sugar and I didn't feel good, so I wasn't flossing. I wasn't brushing my teeth 3 times a day. I mean, half the time I would just lay in bed and it just the self-care wasn't there. And so
Right.
when I got better, I was like I had this list of things that I wanted to do. It was like, okay, get back to driving. And I mean driving anywhere, not just at night around the
Oh,
block, you know,
I,
right?
I just, for me, it was to try to learn to go around the block.
Right.
I even gave my car. I was like, let's get rid of my car. At one point, because I couldn't drive, my husband quit work at one point because we had two kids and I can't even leave the house. So I gave my car to the kid across the street when he was a senior in high school. He didn't have a car. And hey, when you're a senior in high school, you want one. I said, here you
Right.
go. You can have my car. Here's the key. You've got to take my kids where they have to go, pick them up. You have to do all that. And he did. So I'm a big believer in support, and I know everybody doesn't have it, and you can
Right.
make it without support, but I was fortunate. So both of our families, mine, my husband, my neighbors, my friends, was everybody perfect about it? I remember, when my kids were now in high school, one of my daughter's friends, I had heard that the mother was saying, "Oh, she must be a drug addict," or something, that I wasn't going to school functions, I wasn't doing anything. But by the time the girls graduate, I'm better, I'm healthy, I'm at graduation, and but we need to educate people. Whereas the other
Right.
moms were all like, "Hey, you know what? I take Klonopin. I'm having a hard time on it."
Right. Right.
So
Right.
I've always been open. You never know who's struggling, and when you're open, and I know some people can't. And again, I'm not for there's only one way. There isn't one way to. You can get better if you have support. You can get better if you have no support. That's where the support groups. What I really wanted was that support, that kindness,
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
loving. When you wrote a post to get kindness in return, not, "Well, that isn't true and you shouldn't do that." And
Yes.
what? And,
Right.
"Well, if you don't eat all organic, you're not going to get better."
Right.
And that's
Right.
not true.
That's right.
That's not true. You can get better even if you're eating crappy.
Right.
But I always say, I don't ever want to get sick again. So I eat pretty decent.
Right.
But I made a nice treat for tonight. I saw something. I put a speck of honey in it, but we're gonna see how it comes out. My husband goes, "What is this?" It's kind of like a healthy cheesecake, but
Ooh.
not really. So we're gonna see what it tastes like later. You
Right.
know,
You
you
gotta
don't have to be meticulous, but
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's another one. I have people come to me. If I don't eat vegan, am I gonna not heal? If
uh,
I don't eat, and I say, listen, I got people that do wonderful diets. I got people that don't do wonderful diets. I've had clients that drink 6 sodas a day, which just blows my mind. Talk about
yeah,
revving up
not
your nervous
good.
system. That is
Yeah,
about the worst thing you could do. I've
yeah,
had people on the carnivore diet. That's all they ate was meat, and they did wonderful. I've had vegans.
yeah.
That's all they, I mean, it's like, oh, no, you know what it is? Again, at the end of the day, it's fear. To
It is
me,
fair.
most of the time, now you have a lot of situations where things do play a factor and people are sensitive and to various things, but at the end of the day, what's the best diet? The one you're less afraid of. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
like
The
that.
one you're less
But
afraid of.
you know what? I will say this for the vegetarian diet. I tried to do it at one point, and I've seen others, and we used to warn people. And I had Michelle on with me last night on the Coheal weekly thing because she is a vegetarian, but she's been a vegetarian her whole life, and she knows you have to get protein in because a lot of them aren't doing it right. Like you ever see the vegetarians that they're eating just bread and pasta? Well, you might as well just start scooping up sugar,
Right.
So
Right.
I think you have to be careful. That's the only one I've ever criticized because that diet for me, at a point when I was trying to heal, I have to say, I even called Dr. Pert up in England and I said, Reg, I'm either going back on Ativan or I'm going to kill myself. That's how
Mhm.
I went down to 97 pounds doing that. But what I did when I did that, and I thought I was getting protein in, and I know now that I wasn't getting enough, was I had candida at the time. And I gave it juicing and raw foods, and I literally fed it everything it wanted.
Mm.
And within a short period of putting meat back in, I mean, literally within days, I start to feel stronger. But I had done a lot of harm to my gut with that diet. And I know others that have contacted me. So again, I'm not knocking it. If you are a vegetarian, you better make sure you're getting protein in.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
important. That's a dangerous diet if you're not.
Absolutely. And I always tell people no matter what you're going to do, like I just put out a video called Graded Exposure and Everything Benzos or All Things Benzos, which I think is very true. Like, because again, that limbic system I always say has trust issues, like massive trust issues. So even if say vegan is the thing for you, or carnivore diet for that matter, it doesn't matter, you know, don't don't just jump to that. You know what I mean? If you've been living a certain way, just it's a gradual turning, the corner to get there because you can mess up your biome in your stomach, you can get depressed, you can get anxious, you can have reactions. So it's like if you're going to eat more vegan or more this or that, I think it's best to just dip your foot in the water and slowly, and plus it's a lifestyle thing, right? So any lifestyle,
Right.
that's why people always go wrong with diets and exercise. Like they're gonna, the new year comes, everybody runs to the gym, they do all this stuff, and then 2 weeks later they forget about their gym membership. I think it's like you have to find something that's sustainable in some way. So maybe begin by just taking a 30-minute walk every evening. And if you can do that after 60 days, you're in a good place.
Yeah. As I say, I made the mistake in the very beginning of exercising a lot. And
Hmm.
then that threw me into such a state that I'm like, oh, 2 years I was afraid to do anything.
Right.
So it's like, when people say exercise, I'm so sick. I'm like, just walk around your house. Just start walking around your house. Maybe go outside your house. Can you walk to the mailbox and back? So everything I
Yes.
did when I
Yes.
went back was slow, build up, build it up, build up. Again, nobody it has to feel like, oh my God, I have to exercise to get better. You don't. I mean, just move.
That's
Even, I
right.
mean, I don't love yoga, but I know yoga is great. And when I'm under a lot of stress, I used to have this DVD that was strictly for stress. I'm like, oh, I hate doing yoga, but I'll do it. And I always felt better afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a good. I always talk about lulling and pushing, and my kind of approach or my program is like I say you need to lull down the nervous system and access to good chemistry, and push back against the debilitating symptoms, and and lower cortisol and adrenaline, like push back against some of that bad stuff there. And then when I first came out, I think a lot of people reacted negatively to me and said like, he thinks we're supposed to go run a marathon, and I was like, no, I never have said that. I said, if you
Yeah,
listen
yeah,
to my story, I talk about being debilitated, bedbound for several months, and I said my girlfriend had pink dumbbells. these little 2.5 dumbbells. I mean, they were comical. They were little tiny things.
Yeah,
And I said, and I remember curling them about 5 times with each arm, and I put them down, and I was like,
exhausted. Yeah,
that was it. I was like, well, I'm done for the day.
yeah.
But then I did it the next day, and I did it in over about 2 weeks. Then I was at the 10. Then I did the walk to the mailbox, half a walk and back. I mean, I was really debilitated. And over months, we have nothing else to do. By about 6 months later, I was walking around the block. I was, now I never, even in my best day, did I ever get into like running or lifting weights really. You know what I mean? I never got like where I am
Yeah.
today or where I was before, but I did get to a place where I was putting a good little moderate workout on things. I would walk for 30 minutes an hour, 2, 3 times a day. I had
Mhm.
little weights and rubber bands and I would do workouts and things. And I said it's like you wake up every day with a glass full of adrenaline and cortisol, and your goal throughout the day is to dump it out. But how do you dump it out? Walking's brilliant if you can do it.
Yeah.
Deep breathing, all
Gentle.
these
Yeah.
things. Yeah, these little, yeah, exactly, gentle
It
things.
doesn't have to be, yes, I tell people, it doesn't have to be, swimming for those that can swim, because that's pretty gentle in your body. There
Mm,
was somebody over in the UK when she contacted me, and she was just swimming. Now, for me, back when I was sick, I just even to get ready to, I couldn't even have gone out. So we do what we can do, what we're capable of. And like I like when you're in the bed, and those that are restricted to the bed, just do leg movements, do the weights, do something,
right,
because these drugs are fat soluble. We do want to get them out of the
right.
muscles. Dr. Pert used to say that,
Hmm.
you gotta do some, and again, if you can't right now, maybe you can later. So
Right.
I always say there's not one way to heal. There's many ways to heal, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I often would say, they would go, people would say, well, I'm so bad, you don't get it. I can't even leave the bed. And I said, if your house was on fire, could you get out? Well, yeah. I said, all right, so you're
Yeah,
not paralyzed,
yeah,
guys. You're not
yeah,
paralyzed. Like there's a place we can start. It may be so small, like I said, with the pink dumbbells that you think it's ridiculous, but start there. And if you can't, even if you can't do that, I say you can always breathe. You can always watch a comedy. You can always meditate. You can always pray. You can read the Bible. You can do art or color, or there's so many other things you can do to just sort of lull back down and relax. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
so that's there. One thing I really wanted to pick your brain about a little bit because I've been a huge fan of Dr. Ashton since, well, I mean,
Hmm.
in my story, like a lot of people's, I was completely lost. I was on 40 milligrams of Valium at 10 years. And then at the end, um, went to the hospital and they told me basically you have enough Valium to tranquilize a small elephant. And, they scared the hell out of me. I came home, I dropped 20 milligrams overnight, and
Oh,
boom, I was in the belly of the
yeah,
beast. And I sat there for about 6 months, but I didn't go back up. I just had an instinct, don't go back. But I was there and it wasn't getting better. And after about probably 3 or 4 months, it reached a certain steady level of hell. It wasn't fluctuating and all that, but it was like, boom, there's your new baseline, Dave, and it's bad. And I was just lost. And the doctor tried to put me on Seroquel, and he switched me over to Xanax. He wasn't listening, the whole shebang. And I was lost. And finally, I found Dr. Ashton's manual, and I was like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to do it. This is the speed. And so I was following it. And, I felt like maybe she was moving just a little bit fast for me. I think it was like one
yeah,
or two, you're right, 1 milligram of Valium equivalent every 1 or 2 weeks. I want to say, and so I kind of started moving every 2 to 4 weeks. But my goal was
right.
1 milligram every month. That was the goal. So 20 months to come down 20 milligrams. That was what I did. And but I thought she was brilliant. I just did research on her. So I wanted to kind of ask you some things if you don't mind, just because
Yeah,
you knew her and
yeah.
everything. Like how did you for one, how did you meet her? And then what was your impressions of her?
So, as I was calling around over to the UK back in the 1990s, then, when I called CETA, which is Council for Involuntary Tranquilizer Addiction, they were like, "Well, you need to talk to Dr. Reg Pert." So I called Dr. Reg. He was wonderful. He really helped a lot of us back then. But he said, "You need to talk to Heather Ashton." So he gave me her home number, and I called her and told her what I was doing. I was trying to put a book together back then, and it was called Minor Tranquilizers, Major Problems, an international effort to tell the truth about tranquilizers and sleeping pills. And so I was getting different doctors from around the world. So Sweden, Australia, I think New Zealand. I was getting survivors too. So again, there was nobody's on the internet. We're calling and people are telling me about others. And when I called Heather and asked her to write, she said, "Well, what's different between that and Shirley Trickett's book?" So Shirley Trickett's book, the American version is let's see, the UK version was coming off of tranquilizers and sleeping pills, and the American version, I forget it, but we changed the name because it's on the Benzo book review site. And I said, I need something written for doctors, but also so that we can understand it. I need something to validate what's going on. She said, okay. And in comes the mail, comes the 3 chapters. Like I was shocked. Everybody else wrote a couple of pages. She writes the 3 chapters. So when she wrote it and you're looking at it, and I see the 2 weeks. Now, at this point, I'm in touch with them at, at CETA, at Bristol Tranquilizer Group, Unicorbett's Group, Benzac. And I thought, okay, how this is every 2 weeks, that seems fast, even though I never got a chance to take, I was already off and suffering. And I said to Heather, but it's 2 weeks. And she said, if I wrote it the way I would really want to do it, it would be 500 pages. And her thing was, and I try to tell this to everybody, she did not want to use like a lawnmower manual. And she said those words, I don't want to use like a lawnmower manual. This is just the basics. So that's why
Mhm.
she did it that way. So we kind of then put a thing at the front of the manual when we then kind of digitized it. And I think a lot of doctors don't read it. They look and they see the every 2 weeks. And I've seen people say, oh, I did it according to the ASHA manual every 2 weeks. But if you look at the beginning, she says it should be in the patient's hands. And we know in the
Right.
UK, in the tranquilizer groups, they go every 3 to 4 weeks. And
Mm.
I know if I could do it over again, it would be every 4 weeks. And we have so many different choices. She was in Maine. She went to one of the when the Maine Benzo Study Group had a meeting at the time. She flew over for that, and I was supposed to go to that, but I was really sick at the time. I didn't go, and then but she flew over again to something over in Canada, and she said, Geraldine, I've been looking at this water titration that people are doing. She goes, I like it. I
Yeah.
I think it's good. So things were changing
Hmm.
after she wrote that. So now when you look, there's okay, so you can taper the way she says like going over to Valium. And so Dr. Pert also, Reg was adamant that you go to Valium. So he even did a thing, he wrote a paper that's, Valium versus Klonopin, why he felt that. But I would say, but Reg, we see people switching over to Valium. They're not doing well. They go back to the original benzo, but now they know how slow to go. So, and I'm going to say this, and I've always said this, I don't think everyone's going to do well switching to Valium. Some
Right.
do very well, but we all metabolize differently. So
Hmm.
they were learning still from us. So we've got, tapering, regular, dry cutting. We've got compounding. We have water titration. We have liquid, and by liquid because the pharmacy will make it. And now they have the tapering strips. There's many different ways. And some people that have contacted me that tried over and over and over to taper and couldn't do it, when they went to water titration, they did very well. I don't know
Right.
anyone who didn't walk off that way when they were really trying. So there's just not one way.
Right.
So she would tell you herself, she never intended it to be that strict every 2 weeks. And especially when you get down to the end. So if you look on, I think it's benzosupport.org, some of Reg's papers are there. So when he was alive, I could call him and say, hey, Dave Powers contacted me. He's really having a hard time, Reg. He's taken Xanax 5 times a day, and Reg would personally convert yours over.
Hmm.
And he would switch you over in 2 weeks. So
Mm.
his thing was, you don't want to switch over a long period of time. He would switch you over quickly in 2 weeks. He would want you to level out for a month and then taper down. Now, he had a thing when you get to your last 4 milligrams, then you go even those last 4 milligrams, he felt you go slower. Now, I've seen online where some people jump. Well, hey, I'm at 2 milligrams, I'm going to jump. Some did awesome.
Right.
And somebody else said, well, they jumped, I'm going to jump. And they didn't do well. So if you're working and it's going well, you're not that other person. Go
That's
by
right.
what your body is saying. That's what she wanted.
Right. Right. That's fascinating. I'm glad that you said that too, because I think there's two types of people in the benzo community. One that's super dogmatic about everything Ashton said, at least in the
Mhm.
manual. So it's like, I have to do this and it has to be Valium. And I've had, I mean, I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and said, "Do you think I'm not going to heal? I mean, do I have to go to Valium?" I said, "No." And
No,
I don't know Heather, but I would just got the sense that she's probably a lot more like if she was here, she would tell you like get on the benzo that the best benzo is the one you can tolerate, the one
right.
that you can taper. It's not about
See, yeah, and
pride.
they have to remember she was learning when she was had her clinic. She was learning from people like us. I know
Right,
some of the people that were in her group back then, and they're wonderful people. And they loved her, and like for instance, Heather Jones wrote "Prisoner on Prescription." She was one of the people that what the two Heathers became friends, and they were learning. Heather Ashton was learning. And I think with all these years, just like when she heard about water titration, she said, "What do you think of it?" And when I mean, I don't understand it because I didn't have to do it. And one of these days, I'm going to have to watch some of the videos to do it. But I'm
right,
telling you, I always say if I could do it over again, because I'm probably lazy or if people have kids, maybe you don't have time to do it. I think I would have done compounding because I
right,
know somebody here in Massachusetts that did compounding, but she went really slow because she said, I have to work. I don't want anybody where I live to know. I have to be functional. She only tapered 3% every month, took her 3 years, walked off, not a problem.
right,
Did she do a great diet? She tried. Did she
right,
exercise? She did. She didn't overdo. Did she keep a positive attitude? Probably better than anybody. Did she go on to any groups? Absolutely not.
right. That's another interesting topic. So I think I agree with you. If I could do it again and I didn't have compounding or liquid or any of that, I think I did know about the idea of liquid Valium, but my doctor like you might he just laughed in my face like, "Are you serious?" No.
Yeah.
If I could do it again today, I think I would be a mixture of compound with maybe like I tolerated Valium very well. Like they tried to switch me to Xanax. Immediately, I had to call an ambulance and went to the hospital. I mean, I
Uh,
did not handle it.
yeah.
I mean, it sped my heart up. I went into a full blown panic attack. I was like in like
Right.
akathisia like states. I was like, hell no. Came
Yeah.
back to Valium, but I would do like a compound pharmacy, and then I would do a liquid titration. Like the liquid Valium formula where they give you that dropper with those
Yeah.
10 or 20 marks on it.
Yeah.
Because then what I would do is I would get use the compound up to that point of that dropper, that 1 milligram dropper, and then I would start to decrease in by tenths or 20 percentiles, or a tenth of a fraction there. And okay, that's this day, and I would do that over 2 or 3 days, and then I would hold for 2 or 3 days just to sort of let things calm back down. So I would be constantly walking it down pretty much slowly over the month until I reduced that whole milligram
Right.
by the end of the month. You know what I
Right.
mean? Instead of just
Yeah.
dropping and then going,
Yeah. Yeah. And then I forgot, there's another method some use using the jeweler's scale.
mm-hmm.
And they cut it up and they take that tiny bit away.
Yeah,
Whereas years ago, some of the ones in the UK that were talking to us here in the United States, they were shaving with an emery board. So I do
mm-hmm.
like if everybody has to do what's easy for them. I mean,
Right.
their brains are in different parts, different. And the other thing is compounding can be pretty expensive,
Yep.
although I think it was either Walgreens or Walmart that somebody told me was covering it. I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, like, okay, that's
Yeah.
that's worth it because some people just don't want to have to do the water or do the
Right.
jeweler's scale. So I do think I always said for me, I think it would have been easier and I would have gone very slow. I would have wanted to remain working
Right.
but I'll tell you, here's another situation. Not that people can afford this, but there was a guy in Pennsylvania, and he went to this doctor in Pennsylvania. His specialty was detoxification. So he goes to him. He had already been to rehabs, escaped, got out. They're crazy. Goes back on, and it just goes to show he worked with this doctor, and he's like, he's killing me. I can't go to him anymore. The doctor said, don't come, don't come back. But he would go, and he literally got his body working better first,
Right.
and now he goes through hell, feels horrible. Now he's feeling great. And the doctor says, all right, here I want you to taper over the next year. Here's your schedule I want you to do now. And it was the guy's choice. He felt so good he was off in a month
Wow.
and he's never looked back. So
Wow.
did he get his body working better? I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
because he had been in rehabs, he had been treated terrible, so
Yeah.
that was his choice. But I was waiting, like, all right, is something going to happen? He wasn't influenced that something could happen either. See, no
Right.
influence that something bad's going to happen.
Right. Right.
He's not in the groups and he walks away.
That's so
Done.
key. Absolutely. One of the best taper methods I had with a client that did really, really well, same scenario, didn't get on the groups, knew just was had an instinct toward it, got off of it, kept straight. And what happened was he had this great doctor. I mean, I was like, you got yourself the best doctor as far as I'm concerned with benzos anyway. And what the doctor would do is he would create like a 14-day liquid system. So he would get these little almost like pill, little capsules, and they were
Hmm.
marked day 1, 2 to 14. And so he would take day 1, that was it. Day 2. And so he was coming down just like we were saying with the liquid dropper. He was coming down just the
Right.
slightest little bit. And over
Yeah.
14 or 28 days, he would come down a milligram. No thought process, no fear, no worry, no fixation. He just
Yeah.
I was like, that is damn brilliant. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's really hard to get somebody to do that, to take all that time and do all that. Because like you said, it's there's so many factors here. And I've had people that did well with the liquid, but then what happened was they became so obsessed about it. You know what I mean? They had when they were dosing and the preparation, and it was just so much. And I just feel like that these days, I think take benzo out of benzo recovery in a weird
Yeah.
way. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
take it all out of there and just focus on what you can do. Focus on, like, I'm
Right.
all about making a program for recovery. Like I said, trying to access good chemistry, even if it's something like I'm going to pet my dog for 15 minutes every day. Well, that releases oxytocin, and oxytocin reduces adrenaline and cortisol and helps, reduce anxiety, and it promotes good neural health, and that's neuroplasticity. So it's seemingly trivial as that is, do
Right.
that. Pet your dog,
Right.
walk,
Right.
these things, these sort of things.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah,
this
look
is
at the
big.
ones that got dogs. They were sick. Like, should I get a dog? I'm
Yeah,
sick. That dog would lay with them when they're sick. They had to get up and walk that dog.
yeah,
They're like, getting the dog was the best thing I ever did,
yeah.
and I don't know. It's really important to have positivity. The second podcast that I ever did, it's called Getting Ready to Taper. And I tried to put in everything I wish I knew that somebody had told me. And number one is, if you've been on the drugs for years, or even if you're short time and you're sick, I would never, knowing what I know now, I would never just get up tomorrow like, all right, I got my plan, I'm going to start tapering. I feel at least for 3 months to 6 months, start getting everything ready. Have your family lined up, your friends, let everybody know. Get on a good diet while you're fairly functioning before you're sick to death and you don't want to do it. Because I've seen the difference. If you start walking first, have that positive attitude first,
Yes.
know which way you want to go, and then even have the relaxation tapes ready that you're practicing that every night.
Right.
I am telling you, I have seen such a change when you just, like I've said, you don't get up and just go, hey, I'm going to start running the Boston Marathon this
That's
year. I'm
right.
going to run it when I didn't prepare for it.
That's right.
So they really, anybody new coming in, I heard of somebody that was watching in these groups for years, getting ready to taper. I'm like, oh my gosh, for
Mm.
years you've heard the suffering. I would
Mm-hmm.
have been gone. I'd be, so if you want to prepare your body, prepare your mind, prepare
Right.
your friends before your friends see you so sick that they don't believe. Well, you can't be sick from coming off a drug. There are better ways to come off. And we do
Right.
believe people are sick. I was that sick person.
Right.
But if you or I had the chance to do it again, I know I'd be doing it differently,
Oh yeah.
and you
Yeah.
would too. You would
Yeah.
never just cut out half of it,
No.
you know?
No, I was the poster child that did everything wrong. Yeah, no,
Me
we're
too.
definitely speaking the same language, which is unique because, and I'm glad you're saying this because your advice carries a lot of weight. And I've had many people come to me and they're like, I'm about to taper and I got to get off this. And they're almost in a frenzy already. And I'm like, was your doctor ripping you off or what's going on? No, I have to. Time of the essence. And I'm like, why? I'm going to get dementia. I go, oh my God, hold on, hold on. I said, listen, this is not like you said. I said, it's almost like a lot of us are thrown in this situation where I say it's like learning how to climb Mount Everest while you're on Mount Everest,
Yeah,
right? If you have a chance
exactly.
to
Yeah.
try to climb smaller hills and mountains and practice, and it's going to be such a better situation. So I'll get a client that's new and they're ready to taper, and I'll say, okay, no, so do you want me to start tapering Monday? And I say, no, no, let's just work for like a month or two. And they go, what? A month or two? I mean, shouldn't I go, trust me. take a month or two. I want you to start breathing, relaxing, and doing this and that. And like, let's get everything in the right way. And let's start building up what I kind of consider to be like a little bit of mental health armor. Let's build on,
Mhm.
let's put some armor on here,
Absolutely.
build up a
They
little
have a
ethics.
chance. Yeah,
Hmm.
they have a chance to do it better than we did. Isn't
Right.
that the whole point?
That's
Or when I
exactly.
get somebody that, calls me, it's like, no. They're like, everybody's telling me that I'm not going to heal and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nope, not going to happen, and I'm looking. I try on the podcast to only bring on people that are, and again, I could bring in so many, but you want to show that everybody thought they were the worst. Oh, I don't want to ever talk to her. She's so bad. She'll never get better. To show they got better.
Hmm.
And I think, like, number one, fear. Fear is the worst thing. And
Yeah.
look at, if I could do it, I was running a group and I saw people getting better before me, because you got to remember, I was already off, came off very fast, no information.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure, why do any of us do what we do? We don't want anyone to go through what we went through. Isn't that the
Right.
main reason we do it? It's like,
100%.
and now, my daughter's having our first grandchild, so it's like, okay, now my life's going to go towards her for a while. But I've never fully walked away. I've always kind of been in the background,
Yeah.
and especially people with kids. I don't know how you feel about this, but everybody says, when I get better, I am going to help people. I'm like, you know what? When you get better, go
Yeah.
have a life.
Right.
And I said, but I'm like the Godfather. I'm going to call you at some point, and I'm going to
Right.
say, I need you to talk to somebody.
Hmm.
You can block your number, but if I gave you my time, you need to give your time to somebody. But I'm not telling you to do this, because I think it hindered my recovery hearing a lot of suffering all the time.
Oh yeah. Oh
So
God,
when
yeah.
my daughter has that baby, I don't want to hear a lot of suffering. I
Yeah.
want to see joy.
100%. I came back and I was really healed, and I was even working on a lot of my pre-existing stuff because I had a mountain full of things that I needed to deal with. And yeah, I mean, first I put out a video kind of anonymously, just my voice saying, yeah, I think I titled it, will I ever recover? Because I know every day I woke up, that was the thing on my mind. What if I never
Mhm.
recover? Will I really recover? God, I feel so brain damaged. Do you really come back from this? I mean, can you really heal? And and it's scary as hell. And for and probably your situation too, right? We both came from situations where there wasn't people going, you're going to heal. So you were just like, you felt like, Columbus or something, like you were in some new land and you didn't know what the hell to expect. I mean, this was all an experiment. And so when I came back, I put out a video and just said, yes, you do heal. I just want you to know that. And then it kept growing. And then people said, more videos and more videos and put your face in the video. And you should write a book and you do coaching. And so it's a lot like what you were saying. Like I wanted to tell them the good news, and also you made a point about, you want to tell them, you want them not to do what you did wrong. And so one
Right.
thing that I did wrong is I was paralyzed by fear and I just fed into it. I was feeding off of it like obsessively, and I became deconditioned, and it developed all these horrible things. And so my story was unique because I had started my clinical psych program at my master's level, and I was doing just online. I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. Um, and even then, I was having a whole midlife crisis. I felt like, do I drop out? I've spent so much time, and what am I going to do? I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to be living on my mom's couch for the rest of my life. And like I said, no, maybe I'll find some clues in it. So it was kind of a weird, selfish reason I stayed into the program. It was online because I thought, well, this is like master level stuff. I mean, now we're getting into treatments and stuff, right? So sure enough, the first thing I learned, first course was on anxiety management and treatment.
Uh,
And I started learning about agoraphobia. And I was like, that's what I have. And then I learned about what do you do? Graded exposure, this or that, deep breathing. So long story short, though, I put, I did everything wrong. I became on death's door, and then my story was I learned a lot of things that sort of helped me turn it around. And that's when I came back. I thought, why would I be any help in this community? I would just be another person that said I made it. But I thought what was unique was how I made it, why I made it. And I think if I just would have laid in bed and lived on forums and succumbed to all that fear, I don't know if I'd be here today because I got that damn close to pulling the plug on it all.
right.
And it was pinking up those little pink dumbbells and curling them 5 times and putting them down and being gassed out for the day, and then the walk to the mailbox, and then it was all of that stuff coupled with a lot of other things like deep breathing and mindfulness and a lot of stuff. So that was my message. Like I wanted to come back and just say, first off, don't do everything I did wrong. I was a poster child for everything. I ate the wrong diet. I mean, I just did. I could write a manual of everything to do wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would. I literally was just. I was so dumb on it, um, but I wanted to tell them, the good news. A, you would heal, but also, hey, here's my advice on like some things you can do that I think would, that saved my life.
Right.
Um, and not just coming off of it, but now I realize, I get people all the time that come to me. They're 5 or 6 years off, and they're like, Dave, I'm still in protracted. I said, really? I said, well, that's very rare. So let's explore that. Why are you in protracted? What are your symptoms? And a lot of them are very hyperarousal symptoms, and it's oftentimes it's agoraphobia is like the last thing to go, and so I see why they draw that connection. Must be protracted still. I still have agoraphobia. I said, well, you have to understand agoraphobia is a pathway learned classically conditioned kind of mental illness. It may start as benzos, but that thing, make no mistake, it has a way of fueling itself. It will stick around. Now, some agoraphobia does, depending if it's like quickly chemically created,
Yeah,
it
mine
will
was
resolve.
absolutely chemical. I mean, I never even heard the word agoraphobia. I think it
Yeah,
was my brother one time said, "Oh, what are you, agoraphobic? What
yeah,
is that?"
yeah,
Like
right.
I was such a social, hey, want to go down Cape Cod? I'd be gone to, you know what I mean? Anything, go anywhere, do anything.
Yeah,
Shocking that this drug could cause panic, anxiety, and agoraphobia. What happened to me?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
crazy.
I was agoraphobic in like I want to say 3 weeks. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it was
Yeah,
like boom. But it can alleviate, and oftentimes it's not that simple. It's more like, well, as my anxiety starts to resolve, I'm just more brave and I'm getting out of the house more. And so literally they don't realize it, but you're doing a lot of exposure and you're doing things that are helping facilitate that. But when you're 5 or 6 years removed and your receptors have healed and you're long past that, but you could still be stuck in a state of agoraphobia, which is very
yeah.
similar
Oh
to,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's very similar to benzos, and it feels like benzos. And what it creates is twofold. It's not just agoraphobia you're stuck in trauma, because agoraphobia feels like benzo withdrawal. And you're
Yeah.
probably still in the forums, you're still living that. And so once I get people that are in that state, I say, let's just run an experiment. Let's just work on the agoraphobia. Benzos are not. And lo and behold, I promise you, around 2 months, these people start taking their kids to soccer games again. They're going, Dave, I'm leaving the house. I'm able to grocery shop a little bit. I mean, it's not like miraculous. It takes several months to really turn that corner. It really could take a year or two to really fully get back out there. But but lo and behold, they start to really heal at that point. And
Yeah.
so
But
that's
I have to say this with buying, I'm always honest with people. You know, I'm like, I'm never going to lie to anybody about it. So I didn't start to heal till 5 years.
yeah,
And I'm eating, but I'm very thin. Something's wrong. So, and I don't believe everybody should do functional medicine because these drugs are amongst the drugs that harm the gut. So if you look at the gut and psychological syndrome, that book that was written is thegapsdiet.com, which I think that diet is very hard. So again,
yeah,
there isn't one way to heal. So I did go the functional medicine route. I'm at 5 years. Why aren't I healing? Like I'm helping people and they're getting better and I'm not.
right,
When the tests were run, and again, I think the vegetarian diet really led to a lot of how, because at 2 years, I was starting to really get there when I decided to go vegetarian. It really harmed me. So
yeah,
my tests show that I've got candida, leaky gut, and malabsorption. And as I start to heal the gut, I would say within 3 months, I am strong.
yeah,
I am outside. I'm gaining weight. Like
right.
I was trying. I am the gut and the brain are really connected.
Oh
So
yeah,
and then like I wouldn't do the liver function test because I was like, nope, you had to take 2 no-dose pills and 2 caffeine pills. I said, no, I won't take them. How stupid. I should have done it. But I
right,
did do it years later because I thought, oh, I accepted where I was. And then we found out that's back when they had that test. You could see the phase one, phase two of the liver. So I can burn it up phase one, but phase two was I don't get rid of it. And as
yeah,
I did, and again, it's not that expensive, and I don't think people have to spend the money to
mhm,
do this. You kind of know, you could just Google leaky gut and it'll tell you things to do.
right,
And so then I got to another level. So now, as my body is healthy, I remember it was like, oh no, I still won't drive there. I still won't go here. I
Right.
started just again to the food store. I can food shop again. But no, I'm not going outside my comfort zone. And my son said, Mom, you are a lot better than you think you are. And he needed a ride one day to get dropped off at the train station. So I'm driving to the train station. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to get out of the car. When he gets out, that's when I'm going to die. How am I going to get back? Right. And I dialed a friend who also got harmed by drugs, called her up. We talked on the phone. I go, you know what? I'm good now. Hung up. Never had a problem driving down there again. And anytime you conquered it one time, because again, I was very agoraphobic all the years on drugs. That's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't know if people are familiar, like here in Boston, there's a road called the Jamaica Way, and it's like one of the dangerous roads in the country. And I was on that, driving that one day with a little baby and like a 4-year-old. And I am on that when I go into interdose withdrawal. So you want to talk about a memory. You're on one of the most dangerous roads. It's very tight, two cars going this way, two that way. And I'm in interdose like withdrawal. I don't even understand what it is. I still think, what happened to me? And years later, as I'm better, in 2018, when my husband, the first cancer comes, the Merkel cell carcinoma, then comes the leukemia. My daughter's getting married. We've got 10 days to move it up, get her married. I'm at, he's having surgery, we're at radiation. You want to talk about stress? I'm on the Jamaica Way every
Yeah.
day by myself, driving, because when he had the leukemia, he got put in for a month. And I remember I'm driving and people are always calling me. So I'd be on the Jamaica Way talking to people, and I'm going down at Dana Farber. You have to like go down 6 levels, right? And I'm on the
Hmm.
phone with a friend, and she goes, "Oh my God, I'd be having a panic attack if I had to drive down into a garage into the down 6 levels." I'm like, no, not bothering me at all, you know.
Yeah.
So one of the things, so that's a lot of stress I was under.
Yeah.
So I've got 10 days to get a wedding moved up, so because her father's going, he would never have been at a wedding. And then, my niece is sick and my uncle is sick. There was so much going on because I'm sure you see this. What's the other thing people worry about in the groups? Am I going to have a setback? Like
Right.
you're healing from one thing and you're already worrying about a
Yep.
setback. Are you
Yep.
kidding me? Like you're worried about something that may never come.
Right.
And if you ask each person who had a setback, did you feel it coming? I've asked everyone, did you feel it coming? They all said yes and kept going and ignored it.
Right.
So we all have signs when your
Right.
body's had enough. And I can remember I was walking from like, when my husband's in the hospital, you go into Brigham Women's on the Dana Farber floors, and I'm going from Dana Farber over to the hospital, and all of a sudden I'm having a hard time breathing. I'm like, oh, my body's telling me I'm done. Okay, so I'm gonna go home today. I'm gonna lay on the bed. I'm gonna start practicing deep breathing. I'm gonna take my homeopathics. I'm gonna
Hmm.
take whatever. And guess what? I don't care what you all eat for dinner. I don't care. I'm not answering the phone. And you bring it down a
Right.
notch,
Right.
because I got to keep functioning. Why aren't we, after all we've been through, you should be paying attention to signs and symptoms. We have them, our body's telling us. When people say, well, when I'm better, do you think I'll be back to normal? I said, you know what? I think you're going to be a better version of yourself. I know
Right.
when I was younger, working full time, just keep burning myself out.
Hmm.
How stupid. I pay attention now. Our
Right.
bodies are telling us. My body just told me recently, that my thyroid crap. I had no choice this past year but to go, 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 go. And but I'm trying to correct it all now, and function.
100%.
Pay attention to your body. So
100%.
we can be a better version, and I would never worry about a setback. Never.
Right.
Pay
I
attention.
agree. I totally agree. I often say, picture there's like it's almost like a video game, and there's like this little meter here, that grows, and as it gets up to the top, it kind of goes from green to yellow to red. And pay attention. That's your stress levels. That's
Yep.
hyperarousal, and as it starts to get to that yellow, you better start to do something to bring it back down.
Yep.
But and a lot of times with the clients I have, it's the fear of setback that can literally cause them a setback more times than
It's
not.
and again, I don't understand where that fear of setbacks is coming. Like, are people coming? A lot of people that have had the setbacks, they're really not in the group. So how are they hearing about it? I understand the meds, like a med can harm them.
Yeah.
So are we all careful with medication? I mean, I am. I've had antibiotics. I've had to very rarely, but I've had to have them. I'm
Right.
careful what I'll take. Heather Ashton has put, we put a page in there, the fluoroquinolones, don't take them. But have people taken them and done fine? They did,
Yeah,
you
true.
know. My own husband, because when you have leukemia and then they wipe out your immune system, for the next 7 months, he's in the hospital constantly with infections. And at one point, they go to give him Cipro, and I'm saying to him, no, no Cipro.
Mm-mm.
And he goes, well, I didn't have a problem with it. Oh, well, maybe you're one of the lucky ones. Okay. Till one day I'm telling him a story of somebody with their legs, and he goes, my legs have been painful. Like I'm like, you did get flocks. Like that's
Right.
not normal for your legs to hurt like that.
Right.
So we went into Dana Farber. We're like, no more Cipro. Like they had him on it for 6 months straight. We're like,
Oh
he's
wow.
done. She's like, all right, well, I'll put in his charts not to give him Cipro, but we'll give him Levaquin. I go, no. And
Hmm.
he had told me, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, no, he will. I wanted his charts. He will never have a fluoroquinolone again. Never. You want to give him something else. He's done with that. I
Right.
think his legs hurt. So that was 2018. Occasionally he'll still get some pain in his legs since that happened. But
Right.
like, are you not listening to me? Like, no, he's not to have it.
Right. Right.
Oh, and so my husband had told one of the nurses, what I was doing, because one day I showed up and one of the doctors said, why are you dressed up? I'm like, we're coming from the state house. We were just in there talking about benzos. And she said, I try not to give them. But a nurse, when my husband said, I was a little nauseous today, they gave him some pill, a little nauseous. Now, right in front of me, when he said what I do, she goes, well, I can give you Ativan for that. And I've got my back to her and I'm saying to him, absolutely not, you know?
Right.
And I mean, that is given out like candy at
Yeah.
Dana Farber. Ativan, Ativan, Ativan,
Yeah.
constant. And he never took it. We never needed it. We used laughter. We used a lot of laughter all through that. And even we'd get the doctors laugh, and they couldn't believe we would laugh as much as we did. And one of the things I'll say to people, I mourned a lot for myself going through this. I don't know if you did, because when we lost our life, I could be watching a movie, and if there was something sad, I wasn't really crying for that. I was mourning my
Hmm.
old self. I think crying is very healing,
Yeah.
but I also think laughter is really important. Like put on a funny movie and
100%.
laugh. There was a book that my niece, when she was going through her cancer treatment, called Radical Remission. I forget the author. And in it, it's all these people, how they were overcoming cancer in more natural ways. And one was laughter. One was, in fact, I started to think, hey, when the birds wake up, and what wakes the birds up? The trees are releasing, what is it, the most amount of oxygen. So if
Right.
I was up at 4 in the morning, like, oh, I'd run outside just to breathe that in. I'm up. Why might as well go and breathe it in. The book has some really wonderful attitude type information in it. Like
Yeah.
this one guy who gets cancer and he's got so much stress, but he changes his whole life. Well, going through Benzo withdrawal, you should be doing the same thing.
Right.
Change your life.
Yep.
Take in the better parts of life. Laugh. And laughter really did help me a lot.
Me too. Me too. I put it in my book, a
Yeah.
matter of fact, laugh therapy. And I mean, to this day, if I have a client that's in a bad wave or something, I say, put on a comedy, take a soak in the bathtub, do some deep breathing. I'd like to do something called that I've kind of coined the five senses limbic retraining. And I would say, lie in the bathtub, do some deep breathing, and access all of your five senses in a pleasurable way. Have a
Mhm.
little piece of chocolate, light a candle, put on your favorite fragrance, put on some soothing music, you know, have all hit all those senses, because your limbic system is, there's two ways to sort of lull down that hyperarousal. You can talk to it, which I think was like the go-to thing for most of us, is to go, you're okay, you're safe, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna live. You do all that self-talk, and that's super helpful, and the basis of a lot of psychology.
Yeah.
But I said also, your limbic system, if you really understand it, nobody ever had to do that before. It's like sleep. You don't have to talk to your brain to talk it into sleep. All you have to do is show it that it's safe, and sleep will come. If you don't fear sleep, if there's nothing in the environment or in your body immediately dangerous, it will happen. So I said, if you can get quiet and you could just sit there and just, this is the root of like exposure response prevention, ERP, with OCD, and a lot of that rumination is just don't engage it. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to talk to it. And so when you talk to it, sometimes it actually kind of can cleverly backfire on you because it becomes a form of resistance. And so I kind of equate it like this. I say if you're sitting on the couch and your limbic system is your dog, right? Kind of a good analogy because the limbic system doesn't have any intellect. It's kind of just like this simply dumb, kind of obedient part of our brain that reacts like a watchdog. And I said, and you're sitting on a couch, and suddenly you get up and you look out the window, and then you sit back down, and then you get up and you check the door. Okay, it's locked. You sit back. You check the back door. You check the back window. After enough times, that dog is going to start to go, "What are you doing? Are we okay?
Right.
Is there a problem here? Why are you doing all this?" And you go, "Well, we're fine. We're safe." Sure, we were, but now I'm not thinking we are because you're doing all of this. You're doing
Right.
all this
Yeah.
acts of resistance. So I said, the limbic system is designed that it will run in a sort of analysis or a scan on our body. It's constantly right now. It's running a scan on both of our bodies, and and the environment. So if you get a weird pain in the leg, you go, "Oh my God, what's that?" But I said if you're breathing and you're accessing the good senses, and you don't even have to engage it, you don't have to do all that self talk. You just be present and just access to good chemistry. The limbic system will scan and say the body, she seems to be doing well. She feels good. There's nothing in the environment. Hyperarousal will come down. And I say people
Right.
have never ran from a grizzly bear while eating a piece of chocolate, while
Relax.
smelling their favorite perfume, while listening to the most beautiful music. It doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. So you'll confuse it. But
Right.
alternatively, if your limbic system, like I said earlier, I always use analogies, and I say it's almost like we're all living in this healing process where it's like we're sitting in the dark waters at night while sharks are swimming around us. Or another analogy I like to use a lot is like a grizzly bear. You got attacked by a grizzly bear. You're on your way out of the jungle or the forest, and there's a road about 3 miles, and you're pretty sure the bear's not following you anymore. You just got to make it to that road where your car is. I said, and your hyperarousal first when you get attacked, it's like a panic attack, your adrenaline dump. Then after a while it goes down, but your hyperarousal stays activated because it says, well, this bear could still be in this vicinity, so we're not sleeping tonight.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that ain't happening. We're going to keep moving, and it will keep coming down as you get further away and you feel safer. The hyperarousal will start to die down. I said, but if you start telling yourself, I think I've seen a bear, the bear's going to be here. If you stop and somebody says, hey, did you know that there's bears up by that road by your car? Right? Like now it's all going to come back. It's all going to elevate again. And I feel like in a way, this is what we're doing with all these groups and stuff sometimes where you're healing. You had the initial attack of the bear, so to speak, with the benzo, but you're doing really good. You're on the straight and narrow. And then you hear someone say, but did you know so and so 6 months later, the bear came back for her? And you go, oh my God. So now how the hell are you going to fully lull your limbic system down knowing that there's another danger that could possibly be coming? And so that's why,
Right.
so a lot of times when I get people that come to me and they're in extreme waves, and I've helped many people out of waves, and sometimes in like a day, in hours, it's wild how this stuff can turn around on you. And you just give them a little hope, a little peace of mind, a little
Yeah.
perception, and the next day I
Absolutely.
get an email. Oh, Coach Powers, oh my God, I don't know. What did you do? I got some sleep last night, and today's a whole different day. I was stuck in a wave for a month or 3 weeks, and I say, I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? I didn't do anything to
Right.
you. Your limbic system heard what it needed to hear. You did it. You calmed it down. And so I always tell people when they have that, I said, really learn from this, because the hell with what you've heard. This is a real experience you just had. And now you know the power of that you can actually make things go really bad for yourself with these
Right.
fears. And you can
Yep.
also lull it back down pretty damn quickly too. You know what I mean? So it's a good aha moment, I think, to have, because everything else to us just feels just so damn scary. And it's all a
Yeah.
big question mark. You know what
I agree.
I mean?
I agree.
um, I know we're getting short on time here. What was your what do you let me ask you about Heather Ashton again. What do you think she would say about like a lot of the stuff we're talking about with the fear and the doom and gloom and the groups and all that? I mean, do you think she would
I
embrace
don't
that?
think
Or
she would like it, to be honest,
yeah.
because she was all about healing,
Hmm.
and again, continually learning. So if she was still actively involved now, she would be going, okay, so what's going on in the groups? Like what are they using? Oh, if we told her the doom and gloom that was going on, I think she'd be shocked. Because again, I remember when I started the support group and I contacted them in Australia. So here's a good example. So they had, back then it was called Tranks. Now it's called Reconnection. And Beatrice Foss, who wrote Benzo Junkie, and I was in communication with Beatrice. And Beatrice said, well, how are you going to do it online? Back then, and I haven't been in touch with them in a long time. If you were considering coming off of Benzo, you're one group. If you're tapering, you're another group. And if you're off, you're the third group. You never meet each other, ever.
Right.
But how are we going to do it online? We are literally all around the world.
Right.
And I said to her, I'm not sure, but we need to be in touch. We need to know we're going to get better. So I was trying to get all the ones internationally who were better to come into the group. Like, will you come in? Will you talk about your experience? So that's how it started. And Heather knew that we had the groups, but what else could we do? We can't
Right.
go over to, in fact, they were getting aggravated with the Americans calling over to all their support groups over there, because back then there was a lot of, you call over for phone counseling. And back over there, they had what's called charities. We
Mhm.
don't have that here, where they're being covered by the charities so that all those that are injured can use the service. So each one was getting money from their charities, and I understand a lot of that money's being cut back when they should be getting more money,
Yeah.
So I think she'd be very upset that there wasn't more positive attitude. But again, you hear more crazy and crazy stories of how people are being treated and where are they going to go but on
Right.
the group. So you
That's
wish
true.
there could almost be a place where they could go, where they could privately say stuff. And again, even back in my group in the day, if there was somebody really bad, some of us would call them and be on the phone with them so that that's not going publicly out to the others. When
Right.
something really bad happened, we didn't announce it so that everybody heard it. It was
Right.
actually kept secret. Today, boom, it's out there for everyone to be shocked by what they just heard.
Right.
I don't even comprehend it.
Yeah.
Um, because I knew my first person, let's say my first benzo friend that was in my group, who chose to end his life. When I got that news, I can honestly tell you that sent me back for 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, we did not let anybody in the groups know, because if it did that to me, what's it going to do to them?
Right.
You know? So, again, there's no other way to control it. How do we control it? I wish we had other avenues that they could talk, or again, a simple phone call. If there was somewhere they can go and they get to calm down, or they're reassured. And reassurance, or people want to throw them out of a group. Well, you don't do that either, because I have seen, and I'm sure you have seen, some of the sickest of the sick get better. And they
Yeah.
might have been aggravating in the groups, talking every day, boom, boom, boom. And then they are the most wonderful people when they are better.
That's right. Yeah.
So I was never unkind to anybody who was, and they, oh, this one's aggravating, or that one. No, you don't even know them until they're off,
Right. That's true.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think she'd be very upset because she was very positive. But again, still learning in the end. And did she put that supplement in there? That was a little upsetting because she put a thing in there about permanent. Well, I would have been one of the permanent ones. But
Right.
like, okay, Heather, I did have an issue. I had to heal my gut. I wasn't born genetically with everything from
Right.
my liver to process, so I got help there.
Right.
So again, she would have learned from that.
Right. That's true.
Well,
Yeah.
she did. I mean, she knew I did that. So, but
Right.
can everybody do that? No. And you wish all these functional medicine doctors took insurance, because again, I don't think people should be spending a lot of money. There's a lot you can learn online. Just treat yourself or get rid of the gluten. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gluten in
Yeah.
general makes people feel better to get rid of it. If you're having stomach issues, stop taking some of the burden off your stomach.
Right. There's so many um acute things like you're talking about, like the gut health, and one that I always go back to is sort of because my background's in psychology, so I always go back, look, if you can't change the situation, we can change our reaction to it. We can change our interaction to it. And like I was saying with the Olympics, so I do hammer on that a lot because that's just a sort of my, I just think there's a lot of hope in that, and I've
I do
seen a
too.
lot of,
I actually I got the DNRS program. Not that I've had time to do it. I got it years ago, never had time. Then I thought, all right, I'm gonna finally take time when she did the new one that was online. I'm gonna take the time to do that. And then my mother fell. So
yeah,
well, there goes that. I don't have another year.
yeah,
I haven't had time to do it. But I would love to do that because I think we're all stressed,
for sure.
and it's good to calm that limbic system down. Absolutely, they can cause a lot of issues.
Yeah, and the gut the DNRS, and there's several of those sort of neuro rewiring, neuroplasticity acting kind of programs. And that's a big, so I'm about to launch my own training course, like a Benzo recovery
Mhm.
course. I've been literally been working on, I say it's been 10 years in the making, but for the last 3 years, I've just been obsessive on it, and I've got like
Yeah.
45 videos, training
Wow.
courses, and you have to go from one to the next. Then I've got these 4 stages of recovery, and each stage has, three key learning points that you have to have, like three developmental stages, so to speak, in there, or key points. And then they have at least three obstacles, and each stage is designed to bring you to the next stage. And I say, but if you don't beat the obstacles, that can prevent you from getting to the second stage. Then they
Mhm.
kind of just bridge to stage 1 to 3 to 4. And then I kind of broke it down into these sort of 3 tiers of what I call the benzo boxers, because I've always had these old boxing gloves on all my stuff. I bought them a long time ago, and it was just the perfect metaphor of the idea of like you're in the toughest fight of your life, and you're going to have to learn to fight in a sense on this thing. And so I said, there's 3 different stages of boxers. There's your beginner boxer who doesn't really know what they're doing. Then you got your kind of intermediate boxer who's got the momentum and they're learning things. And then you got your champion boxers. You're like your elders, your wise, these by these point, like you said, these are the people that make they come full circle, and they're just radiating beauty at that point. They're healthy, they're version 2.0 of themselves. They're practically a psychologist or a therapist themselves at that point coming out of it. But I created this program in part because I wanted something better as a coach, because
Mhm.
as a coach, I offer a lot of support. Sure, I'm not doing therapy, but I said I'm more like a teacher, I think, in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
that is better to do that, to
Right.
let them teach and learn it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So it's like I just rather be like your little benzo professor in some sense. But I said if I talk to you once a week, imagine taking a general psych course, that's a 16-week course that's designed for you to be in class 2 or 3 hours a day, 2 or 3 days a week, but you're only talking to the professor on the phone 1 hour a week, right? Like that's going to take
Mhm.
forever. And it's so hard to keep track of everything he would want to tell you and every intricacy.
Right.
So I go, no, I'm making a program. I'm going to lay it out methodically. It's going to have everything. And then, I'm going to have it bridge into these different stages. So then the final component was trying to kind of going back to what you said earlier about the support group, that whole problem. And it was like, I know rumination is such a big, it is just a massive problem. If people realize how that hindered them or could make them worse, I mean, we would be talking about that more than histamines and a hell of a lot of other things, or at least it would be right up there at the top with those things. And so I created this positive support group, and everybody started to get with it, and they were like, "Yeah, this is great." Yeah, I still want to talk about symptoms, I just find this is better. This is more comforting. If I want to talk about symptoms, I'll go somewhere else. Well, then, the tide started to shift, and more people kept kind of trickling in with the symptom talk and the symptom talk. And so then it became like this like civil war in the benzo forum, my forum, where half the group was writing me going, make them stop. They won't stop talking about symptoms. And the other half was going, why can't we talk about symptoms? Damn it. You're trying to help people. Well, I have questions and I want to know it. And so it was like, wow, you're putting me in a situation now where how do I please both? So I thought, okay, I'll make this program. I'll put it and I'll put it on this. I'm using Mighty Networks, which is very cool because you can create a lot of sub forums. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh, that way I can still have the same platform, but I can make a sub forum for symptom talk, and I can moderate that, and I can and personally engage it, because I realized a lot of people were coming to my forum and they wanted to ask me questions, but they were just asking it out loud, and so I was sort of ignoring it because I don't want to talk about symptoms,
Right.
and a lot of it's questions that you can't answer anyway. It's red flags for rumination. Things like, Well, what if I got worse 6 months out? What if? What do you mean, what if? What if you got better? You know what I mean? That's not a question. Nobody can answer
Right.
that. Nobody can answer that. Who knows if
Right.
that would happen? I would say
And again,
overwhelmingly,
why think about it? Why think about it
right.
now? You
Because
know?
thinking about it is more likely to cause the damn thing than they
Right.
realize. Like you're telling your limbic system again, there might be a bear coming for me. There might be a bear coming for me. And every time you keep saying that, it's listening and it's getting a little more aroused. It's getting a little more hypervigilant, and you could literally cause a situation for yourself. So the
Mhm.
idea to me was maybe if I could create a safe space where people could have it all. And so if they came into the main forum, they didn't have to be triggered by something they didn't want to see. You know what I mean? And but then if I have the sub forums, sub threads, I can also moderate those so people aren't on there just going crazy because rumination is an
Right.
addiction. I mean, you literally get addicted to it. And I tell them, I say, it's almost like we're all like at a bar and we're just pouring each other shots. We go, have you heard of histamines? Oh, here's a shot of that. And oh, histamines. Have you heard about this gene? Oh my God, what's that about? And have you heard about this? And there's a
Right.
thin
It's
line
just like
between,
sometimes too much information, you know?
yeah, you start to go,
I,
you
I
just,
will say this one thing that Heather used to say. We all kind of, everybody's symptoms are different. And
yeah,
one of the things she would talk about sometimes is whatever our weak point is. So let's say my weak point is my stomach. That's where it got me, right?
absolutely.
Somebody else, they might have had migraines. So theirs could be in the head. That's why she said it tends, benzos tend to maybe, there's that one, that's why we're all different.
Yeah.
She felt that whatever your weak point is, that might be your last thing to go, you
That's
know?
absolutely, I totally agree with that. That's exactly what it was for me. And I see that with, so many clients, like whatever your thing was, heart fear, whatever, that will be the last damn, like if it's a movie, it's like the last bad guy you got to defeat, the last boss or
Yeah,
something is that
right,
last thing there.
right.
It's interesting to me now that I'm seeing this sort of schism in the community. And, I think it was Picasso that said to become a master, you have to kill the old master. Or maybe it was Michelangelo. Now I think about it. It was some
Mm,
famous artist. I'm forgetting who, but that was the idea of it. And it's been said
right.
before that, that to become, the student must kill the master. Like this is like, and I'm seeing this in the community, I feel like, where you have people that are hardcore Ashton to a fault, but they get really dogmatic and they start cherry
Yeah,
picking things she said. The same people that will say, hold Ashton very high will then say, well, you can't take an antidepressant or you might as well kill yourself. I go, I don't, Ashton wasn't against antidepressants. And well, you got to have
yeah,
adopted super strict diets. I don't think Ashton was about that either. I believe she
no.
said to
But
try to
you know
be
what?
pretty. Mhm.
Yeah, she was never about that. But one thing she does have in there, which I think none of us really would agree about, and I know, I think it was in New Zealand, one of them, they were like, they wouldn't even use the Ashton manual because she puts in there you can have a little bit of wine.
Yeah,
So
I saw
there's
that.
a pot in there where she says you can have a little bit of wine. Now, she took a lot of counsel from Reg Pert. And Reg would tell you, I know a lot of people say no alcohol for 2 years. Reg would tell you no alcohol for 3 years.
Right.
So that was a little upsetting to see that because I'm sure you've had some people. I had a young boy one time, he's turning 26, he feels recovered. Hey, Geraldine, I just want to go out and have a couple of beers for my birthday. I'm like, look I don't drink,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't do it. You're only like 6 months off. Don't do
Right.
it.
Right.
And he went out and let me tell you, he got sick. Like he said, I
Right.
had two organic beers. I'm like, I think it
Yeah.
was too soon. Now, have others had alcohol and did fine? Like we're all different.
Yeah. That's so
So
true. Yeah.
I did question her about that because she said, again, she paid attention to other Benzo people. Some had
Yeah.
a little, some didn't. The first night I ever called over to Heather Jones in the UK. So it's evening and she's coming in the door and it's late at night. And she says, so I tell her who I am. I think she knew I was going to be calling. She said, oh, Geraldine, I'm sorry, I've been drinking. I'm a little tipsy. And I'm like, you drank alcohol? I said, your story, when I read your book, it's so much like me. She was so agoraphobic. She'd be at the door, wouldn't let her husband out. And she said, oh, I divorced Lou. I'm like, you divorced Lou after all
Wow.
you went through? She said, oh, we're good friends, because I felt like I knew her from the book. So it's like life goes on,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it was, there she was. I mean, she was years off at that point, but it's like life does continue. I don't drink, and I always say to people, I don't drink alcohol. That's up to you. Some
Right.
are absolutely fine with it. So when people say Heather Ashton says we can drink, she's not saying go out and drink. I don't
Yeah.
think that's what
Right.
she means by
Right.
it.
Right.
But personally, I go by Reg. I mean, he says 3 years, so I would say at least two, but that's me
Yeah.
saying
Me
it.
too.
If you do it, your choice.
I'd say the same thing. At least 2 years at the bare minimum.
Right.
You'd
He
be
felt
smart.
you're hitting the same receptors, don't do it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
he was very big in the UK. Like he ran victims of tranquilizers, and Heather really did take a lot of her counsel from him. So they would go back and forth, with
Yeah.
what are they learning? And I think even if he was alive today, he would be very interested in what's going on. But the one thing, we're not the only two talking about what's going on in the groups. This is everyone talking about this fear mongering going on.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can't use this toothpaste. I can't eat that.
Yep. Yep.
It's got to stop. I don't know how you stop it because there's
Yeah.
so many people in these groups now.
Well, I think this conversation is a good start, right? Because people respect me, they really respect you, and I'm so glad you're saying all this because I didn't know where you were going to go on some of these directions, and I thought, gosh, you might come on here and be thinking completely contradicting everything I've been saying, but you're saying the same
No,
things, and I think it's good that they hear that. And I saw that with the alcohol, and I thought, I see where she's coming from because I had clients that drank all the way through. I had clients that said if I didn't drink, I wouldn't have come off of it. I go,
right.
that's not my model. I couldn't
Yeah.
do that, and I would never tell someone to drink. But I also can't, if we're being completely scientific about it, can people do that? Yeah, some people can. Some
So
people
you've got people drinking while tapering. So
I've
that
had people, yeah. I
yeah,
put out a video about the alcohol, and you'll see people in the comments talking about it. And people
yeah.
said, I drank, and I used it as it just took the edge off. And I go, okay. I mean, that was playing with fire, but it
Yeah,
worked for them.
I think it is playing with fire. But you know what? Their choice. But when somebody does talk to me, I will say, just for right now. So that's my opinion. Like just
Yeah,
for right now, you're trying to get off these and get better.
yeah,
You're hitting that same reset. It's like you're taking something to boost your benzo.
right. It's exactly
But
what it
we
is.
can't
Yeah,
control people. We can't control people. And
yeah. To
but
each
I
their
go
own.
with Reg on that. He was an amazing. I mean, imagine like, and not like, look at it's gotten so big over the years. You literally could call him, and he was making out people's schedules. I love the way he did his schedules for people. He took that person into consideration, and it was done for them. We can't have that anymore.
Right,
People have to learn their tape is in their hands, their diet's in their hands, their stress levels in your hand. The one thing I tell people is this is the only time in your life where you kind of get that time out
right,
where we're trying to heal. Because when you're better, I don't have a minute to myself, like
right.
ever. It's a rarity.
Yeah,
I would like a little time, time to myself.
yeah.
And we
I feel
need
you.
that.
I feel you
So
on
they
that.
should really take that time to do everything for themselves to heal. And look at
Absolutely.
there are those that are working full time, but they are still pacing themselves, which is smart.
Yeah. Yeah, and the takeaway I think from what I tell people about that when they say, Ashton, and sometimes I have brought that up. I say, Ashton wasn't against people having a drink every now and then. And I'm thinking she's talking about like a little sip of wine or two with dinner every
Yeah,
now.
I
I don't
think
think she meant doing shots of tequila. You're right. So she's
exactly.
talking about a little drink of wine here and there. I said, but
It's
what
an
the
occasional, right? She meant it as an occasional, not an every night. It was an
right.
occasional, which is, I think, why she didn't want to take it away. And so, like I said, one of the organizations, I forget whether it was Australia or New Zealand, because of that, they will not at all recommend the Ashton Manual. It's
Ah,
like, you know
that's
what?
just a
You can just still say, we don't
yeah.
recommend any alcohol, period.
Yeah. Come on. It's a
But
spectrum, and some people that would be completely fine. But to me, what I'm glad she said it, and I'm glad it was there because she's not here to clarify a lot of things. And what I tell people is the fact that she said that you could have a little bit of wine every now and then isn't think about what she's really telling you. Is she telling you that you need to boil your chicken and that you need to live in a certain box of benzos, like, you know what I mean, where we're resisting all the fear mongering. The fact that she
right,
was that kind of liberal about it and wanted in her the message there I took was, hey, relax. It's going to be okay. You don't have to hold on so tight. You don't have to be so stringent. You don't have to be so paranoid. And you don't
right.
have to eat only three vegetables, you know what I mean? I mean, I have people that literally they've gotten so food phobic they will only eat two or three foods, and they're afraid, like you said, they're afraid of the toothpaste, what toothpaste to use, and all
What
of this,
toothpaste to use, right?
right?
Oh, my shampoos, my skincare products, like those are all personal choices, and people should not freak out. Your fear is causing you to be it's causing you to be sick. I thank God back, look at even when I was sick and we were in the groups, there was not that fear mongering going on. It was
Yeah,
everybody trying to learn. Number one, we were all
yeah,
trying to learn and uplift each other. So there was not a lot of this fighting. I heard that somebody was like online the other day, unless you're vegetarian, you don't eat meat, you're going to get sick. Like, no one has, if
yeah,
that person chose to be vegetarian, that's your choice. You should
right.
not be telling somebody else what to do. And again, anything I say, it's my opinion. It might be what I tell you, but I'm going to say that you have choices to make. Like in anything in life, you have choices. There is no one way.
Well, but they should listen, right? I would definitely encourage people to listen to your opinion than John the mechanic in the forum. What's
Right.
his
Well,
experience?
yeah, a
You know
lot
what
of
I
times
mean?
people come back and say, I should have listened to you. I'm
Yeah,
doing it now, but I should have listened.
yeah,
But you can walk away and make your own choice. There is no fear mongering.
yeah,
There just
right.
shouldn't be that. If you
What?
call me, I'm going to give you my opinion.
Sure. Yeah,
So that's what's going to
yeah,
happen, and then take it or leave it. But there's no fear. Like, will I not get better if I don't do that? No. You
yeah,
know.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Every day on my messages that I get, text messages, emails, messenger, all of this, it's all surrounding that this phobia of everything. And I don't think there's any situation where phobias are, like I said earlier, kind of with the nocebo effect, the
Yeah.
psychogenic effect, all of that. This is a breeding ground for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
You know what, Dave? One thing I want to mention while we're talking, another thing about Heather, she was adamant, and I will say adamant. She said her equivalencies over to Valium were 100% accurate. Now, I know a lot of countries, and especially here in the United States, I think they don't agree with her equivalency. And she kept saying, my equivalencies are correct. So, again, if you're going over to Valium, then you use hers. If you were going to stay, like I think to be honest, I try to be honest. I think I would not have gone to Valium if I ever had the choice. Ativan was the devil I knew,
right,
but I would have now known how to do it. Do you know what I mean?
right,
So
right.
she, like, if somebody goes to a doctor and a doctor says, no, I don't agree with her equivalencies, that is one thing she wanted people to know. She felt her equivalencies were absolutely perfect. And
Right.
I've seen other things where they're so off from hers. I always go by hers.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Yeah. I want to say before I forget too on the topic of like the phobias. I I've had so many experiences where someone came to me and they're on three foods. I boil my chicken, I eat broccoli or something. They have like three pieces of food they eat. All these phobias of they're sponge bathing in the sink. They can't take showers, like all this type of stuff.
Right,
And they're completely dogmatic. They've heard this, they've read it somewhere, they've got it in their head that I have insert A B C D E F G variables. I'm unique. I have to do this. And I always say, well, let's just run an experiment because that may be true. It may be true. And I never want to gaslight anyone. I said, but what's also that while that may be true, the thing that's always true is your limbic system's got trust issues and it draws connections to things. So if I'm eating an apple and maybe I was going to have a panic attack that day at 12 o'clock, it was just in the cards for me. It didn't matter what the hell I was doing. I could have been watching a comedy. You're sometimes it just is like I call it neurological weather. It just doesn't make any sense. There's no triggers. It's just I'm anxious now at 2 o'clock for whatever damn reason. But if I'm eating an apple and I have a panic attack and I start to go, I think this apple did it. And then I get on the forum and someone goes, I had a panic attack eating an apple. I think it's the fiber content of apples and whatever. It's like now I'm phobic about apples, right? Like that thing, it
right,
happens like that. Like no
right,
pathways are built faster and stronger, more efficiently than fearful pathways for good reason,
right.
this for survival.
Yeah.
But anyway, when I get people in that state and we start to work on just gradual exposure, I said, why don't you just take one little bite of an apple? And what if and we do this over time, they start to get better and they can eat apples again. But this is one
Mhm.
example. It's never actually been an apple, but
Right.
but you get my
But
gist here. You know what I mean?
right. And that's like the two girls that were so sick and could go into anaphylaxis. I mean, the fear, they were both very sick. But so Terrence and Austin stories are great to listen to. They same thing. But but what I would want to know is there are some that they were down to three foods to eat. I remember one was down to zucchini, beef, and saltines. That's all they could eat, or they would have a reaction.
Right.
So again, is it the limbic system? Are they having like, do they get better? Like some can get better later on, but I know with those two, and I know they were both very ill, they had to start releasing that fear and just growing and growing and yeah. So
Well,
it
to your
trust.
to your point, now that's again, it could be because that's just how they were, and they did have to eat that. That is a real, very real variable. Then it could been get. Then again, it could be they had developed a food phobia, and that's a very real variable. But
Right.
my emphasis is, let's say it is the food. Things change. You're not going to be stuck on those three foods the rest of your life. That much I can
Right.
promise people. But you can spend the rest of your life phobic of those three foods, or of all the other foods. That part, like the agoraphobia, it's like, yes, agoraphobia can absolutely be completely triggered by this benzochemical thing. But years later, 10, 15 years later, you're still dealing with it because not because per se it's a chemical receptor that didn't heal yet, because your brain has learned this pathway that driving is dangerous, grocery store is dangerous, or think of it another way, driving is a grizzly bear. Grocery store, there's grizzly bears. These things, they form like that. Like you literally have to retrain your brain, through a process, a systematic process, that these things are safe. So my emphasis is, even if you do have food sensitivities, and I had a lot. I mean, at one point I got down to, like, I was very much just pescatarian. Like I was drinking, these fruit green, mean green, drinks and weird stuff like that. But the emphasis still is, even if that is the case, it's only it's only temporary, and don't, be careful you don't develop this secondary thing. That's what I'm always
Right.
talking about. The secondary thing is, it's always at the door. It's like a wolf at the door. It's always going to be there. So we always look out for it. But I think some people hear me saying that and say, "So you're telling me I can't have food sensitivities?" No, I'm not saying that.
No,
I'm saying
we
your food
know that that's
sensitivities
real.
will lead to this other thing, and that other
Yeah.
thing can be worse than
Yeah.
the original thing. You know what
Right.
I mean?
We
So,
know there's the chemical sensitivity, the food sensitivity. We know some have mental symptoms, some have physical. Like I'm like, I can remember we had a young girl here one time, a young dentist, and my husband's listened to her and he goes, "Well, you sound like my wife."
mm,
And he's like, "Yeah." And she only had a benzo 7 times, but she went in perfectly healthy, had a reaction to a drug, was injected with Valium
yeah.
twice, which Reg Pert always said is 10 times stronger, and then given it by mouth 5 times. And it affected her gut so much
Hmm.
that she had it literally, it took 2 years of healing her gut and then was fine.
Wow.
So, drugs do affect us and it's
Yeah.
real, but she had phobias and fears and just
Yeah.
like me. And yeah,
Yeah. So we just try to, all we can do is all we can do, right? Like at the end of the day, I think you just try to get on the straight and narrow. You try to eat the right things, you try to do the right things, you try to surround yourself with the right things, and then you kind of got to let go of everything else. You
absolutely.
just sort of got to let
Yeah,
go of everything else, and know it's a process, and processes end. It's like a season. This is a season of your life, and eventually this season will end.
yeah.
uh, it's the fear of, what if the season doesn't end? Oh my God, here we go. This is
It
the
is
only
that.
condition
Yeah.
where the fear of the season not ending can cause the season not to end to some
Yeah.
level. It's so maniacal how it works.
Right. And
But
the sad thing that you see, I'm sure you're seeing it more now, and which is really sad, the amount of people being cold turkey by their doctors. It's not even choice. Doctors are just cutting them off,
yes.
coming into these groups,
Yeah.
and they're just thrown into hell.
Yeah.
Now, so the thing is, because I didn't taper, I'm not going to get better. And I can say, and I'm sure you can, I've seen some cold turkeys get better than someone that micro tapered. So that's
100%.
still not true. So again, there's the fear mongering. Not a good way to have been. It's wrong what's happening, with these cold turkeys being cut off, and like that's it, you're done.
I'm so
Like
glad
that
you said
is
that. I could hug you right
so
now.
that still
Yeah.
doesn't mean you're not getting better. Are you going to suffer? Yeah, because you got thrown into it. You had no choice. But
Yeah.
and Malcolm later used to say, I spoke to Professor later, and he would say, somebody could be on benzos 20 years and come off and be better in 2 months, and
That's
somebody could
right.
be on benzo 2 months and take 2 years to get better. And he'd say, we don't know why.
100%.
But I
Yeah.
think we kind of know a little bit more now why. there's still no one answer to get you there, you
Right.
know?
Right. Absolutely. I've got theories on it, and as far as I think some answers, but not totally. And I say the same damn thing. You could be on it 2 weeks, 2 months, and spend 2 years coming off. And I've had clients that came off after 25 years, walked right off of it. You know, and
Yeah,
I'm so glad you said that, because just today in my group, there was a little talk about this where, someone had posted something about cold turkey. That's always the big thing. Well, you think I heal? I was cold turkeyed. I say, listen, again, my experience as a benzo coach and working with people from around the world is not reflective of what I see in forums. I'm sorry, it just isn't. I see just as many people who cold turkey heal beautifully, and I see just as many people who were cold turkey that are struggling. The same can be said about the people that micro taper too long, right? Like
right,
they were in horrific states for too long. There's a price to be paid for that. So sometimes a
right,
cold turkey is actually probably the lesser of the two evils,
right.
depending how you look at it. It's like,
Yeah, not that
mm,
I'd want it. Look how you
I wouldn't
felt
want it.
just cutting in half.
Yeah, I would never
Yeah,
recommend it. A slow, patient-led taper is the way to go.
yeah,
Absolutely. But if you're tapering for 5 years or something, come on, at that point, if you're not thriving at least, or at least having a semblance of
right.
life, if
Yeah.
that's the case, who cares? If
Because
you're
like
doing
the
good,
woman here, yeah, the woman here in Massachusetts, 3 years, took her time, eating good, exercising, had to maintain her place in her community, walked off beautiful. But she was maintaining that healthy, positive attitude, no influence from
right,
anybody that it's going to be bad, you're taking too long. So we're all different. That I think
right,
that's the main thing. And if you and I could do anything, it's the message of hope.
right,
And that should never be taken away from anybody, no matter what someone's circumstance is. Because
100%.
I've seen and you've seen some of the worst get better.
Yeah. Hell, I think we both were pretty damn bad. I mean,
I was
there
very
was,
sick. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there was
Yeah.
definitely a moment where I was like, there's no coming back from this. Even if I could get off the rest of the drug, I was like, I am damaged for life. I knew it. I just knew it. My brain wasn't working right. Like I was so bad. And then I thought, even if I did, come off of this and heal I'm not going to heal fully. I'm always going to be weird. I'm always going to be somehow really left with a paralyzing anxiety disorder. Now it's 10 years later. I drive wherever I want. I do whatever I want. I do indie film. I do things that would scare the damn crap out of me before benzos, and even on
Mhm.
benzos. Like I think I might have less anxiety now than I did on benzos. And I know that's a
Right.
huge statement. I mean, you get the moment when you first dose and you have that little great moment, but then that wears off, and the rest of the time you're still kind of back where you know what I mean. And then toward the end, those last, I say, 3 years probably, I don't think it was doing any damn thing. It was so short lived, those reliefs that I got. I could pop a 10
Yeah.
milligram extra dose of Valium and get a relief for an hour or two, and boom, I was right back in it. I wasn't
Yeah.
sleeping. So it was like, now I sleep good, I can travel, I can do things. I still deal with, look, I had anxiety and trauma and a lot of stuff before all of this, and I still work on that stuff, so I'm not like Superman. But I think I'm better than I was before benzos, certainly on benzos. So that's
Right.
my message to people, that this
Right.
thing is not just that you can beat it, but you can come out of it a better person. But in order
That's
to
I've
do that,
always said, yeah. You
but
will I be the same? No, you will be better.
right,
You will
if you
pay
work on
attention.
it, right? But if you can't get new results doing the same old things, right? So on some level, a lot of us come out of it, our diet's better. We've learned how to separate fear from anxiety.
Mhm.
We've learned to appreciate what really matters. We're more empathic. We know what's important. When
Right.
the car breaks down, you don't lose your crap
Oh,
anymore. You go,
yeah.
so what?
That's it, right. But
you know,
here's the one thing I think one of the biggest traumas is the ones who had children or spouses and the relationships ended. The ones whose
yeah,
children won't speak to the parents, or the parents threw the kids out, or the ones that actually got divorced. And then when they got better, it's too late.
yeah,
The other spouse went and got married. It's destroying families. And
yeah,
the ones whose children, it breaks my heart for the ones whose children won't speak to them anymore because how they acted or couldn't function during that time. I'm very fortunate that my kids don't, which is why my son and I do the podcast together.
mhm,
My kids don't hate me for what I never was at school. I
right,
homeschooled them for a while, and then I was even too sick to homeschool them. So then send them back, and I don't know how I'm going to get you there, and I don't know how I'm
yeah,
going to pick you up. and you do what you have to do to survive. But
Hmm.
that's the long run trauma of, I feel bad for those that their kids won't talk to them or that they
Right.
wound up
Oh
divorced,
yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah. Plenty of my clients, same thing. Husband,
It's
divorce.
heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
if these doctors would look at the long end result of what prescribing that pill that you probably shouldn't have prescribed in the first place, look at the years of suffering and the loss financially. I mean, I'm 68 now, so I look at what my retirement could have been had I maintained, worked. I loved my job. I mean, to have such a wonderful job, like just not even 2.5 miles from my house, I would have worked till the very end. And my friends are all starting to retire now, and
Yeah.
and I look at what I get in my retirement versus what they're going to get, and it's a joke.
Yeah.
But there's still that loss that I feel, or even my husband when he quit his job to stay home. There's the loss you'll always feel from that, but it's like, what, we're alive. And at one point, I remember he said to me, "Thank God you're healthy, so you could take care of me."
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Right.
you didn't take care of me as good as I'm taking care of you now, because it was like, oh, that's another thing. When you're going through this, I knew my husband had to get away from me at times. So he's like had to help with the kid, anything outside the house, food shopping. He had to do all of that.
Yeah.
It put a strain. The fact that some
Sure.
marriages even make it is a miracle.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a
It's not
perspective.
easy. And yet I always tell people they need to get away from you. If you've got to bring somebody in, get your spouse out of the house. They got to have something away from you and don't look like a patient. I always tell people, get up, get dressed. Do not look like a patient.
That's
As sick
true.
as we
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I agree. I've said the
Yeah.
same thing. Get up, put on your nice clothes, put on your
Yeah.
makeup. Well, I don't feel like,
Yeah.
but just do it because it's
Oh,
healthy
I
for
could
you.
barely take a shower.
Yeah.
I would have to, I was so sure I was going to die. I would just get in the shower, whether like even my son, I would say, once I get in the shower and shut the curtain, just, yeah, be in the bathroom. I can't even have you just be in here in case I drop. That's how sick you feel
Yeah.
like you're going to be. Or he came
Right.
home from school one time and I'm still sitting there. It's just my adrenals were just gone. And I hadn't eaten. I couldn't even make myself some eat. He walked me upstairs, and then he's like, "Do you want something to eat?" I was like, "Just make me a dropped egg on toast." I couldn't even nothing. And so my
Hmm.
family did surround me. But so when people think, "Oh, she was never sick," yeah,
Right.
I was. And I remember somebody brought someone to my house one time. He didn't even speak the whole time he was here. He literally was almost like brain dead. And we're talking, and I'm telling him, you can get better. You're going to get better. And finally, I looked at him and I'm like, you don't think I was ever sick? Because, I'm talking and I'm
Right.
like, you don't think I was ever sick, do you? And all he did was go like this. And I said to him, someday when you're better, no one's going to believe you were sick.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
I did a podcast with him and his friend. It was a high school friend that they kind of connected on Facebook, and she saved his life. They work now. He's full time, perfectly healthy, couldn't even speak when she brought him here.
Yeah. That's so
And I
true.
said to him, no one will believe you either, you
Yep.
know?
That's so true. I had people reach out to me and they go, I saw them actually in the comments once and they were arguing. And one guy said, what do we know about this guy? Did he really go through this? And you know what I mean? It was just so crazy to me. It's like, why the hell would anyone fake this and do it the
Oh,
way I did it and come, I was like, but I get it. I guess it's just so hard to believe to
you
say he
can't
looks pretty
believe.
damn good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
well,
cannot believe that they're sick, because that's the other thing. Sometimes you can't see all the suffering unless I guess I'm thin, back down to 97 pounds and sweat dripping off me and my hair's curling up because it's soaking. You can't see a lot of our suffering.
right.
We're in a room because it's dark and the light sensitivity. I mean, I used to have sunglasses on in my house,
Yeah, me
you
too.
know?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. The light
just
sensitivity was one of the last things to go for me, in fact. I mean, I had light
really.
sensitivity for years. Like after that, like if I was even when I was driving again, if I like a car at night headlight hit me in the eye the wrong way, I was like, whoa.
Oh,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? It was just
Yeah.
like, and even still to this day, like certain patterns, stripes, and weird things just don't, I
Oh,
don't know.
yeah, that still bothers me.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's
I
weird.
don't, I think that would bother anybody though, certain patterns on shirts and
Yeah,
whatnot, or
like, I
if you
mean,
look at
God,
something.
yeah, I remember seeing an image and it was like stripes down a hallway to make it look like the floor. And I said, I couldn't even look at that. I was like, I would never
Yeah.
make it through that room. Like
Yeah.
it just felt like I was gonna do something bad to my brain. Well, hey, I
Yeah.
know we've gone a long time and I really
Yeah.
enjoyed talking with you. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear how similar we are in a lot of what you were
Yeah.
saying, because I know I feel like a lot of times like I'm the odd man out that's preaching a lot of things, and people have been critical of me and say he's just too positive and he's lying and it's just all these things. And so it's great to have someone like you who I think you're, like I said, your voice carries a lot of weight, and to hear you saying very similar things, I think is just awesome. So I really appreciate you
Yeah, I'm
spending the
glad we
time.
finally got to do this. It's been a
Yes, I
while.
know.
We've been trying to get
Yes, I
together to do
know.
it.
I'm yeah, I'm pleased. So before we go, well, two things. One, I hope you come back because I had so many questions that I want to ask you that I'd love to pick your brain on another time. So I would love for you to come back.
Sure.
And the second thing is, before we go, is what are you getting? What are you doing right now? I think Co-Heal. I went on that website and I saw you and some things. So share how they can get a hold of you and anything that you're doing.
Yeah, so if they go to cohealme.com, and I've never done, I mean, I've talked to people for years, but I never did the coaching. I always felt like, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah,
And I probably should have waited till September, but I'm going to do a little bit now. But again, my daughter's having our first grandchild, so I will be busy with my daughter. So my time will be limited there.
yeah,
But I mean, already I think I've helped the people that I've talked to calm them, bring that level
yeah.
down and help them to feel better. So they can get me there. Also, we have the podcast, Benzodiazepine Awareness with Geraldine Burns.
Right,
So if anybody, I think we have my first four, my story, getting ready to taper, what I would do differently, and the do's and don'ts. And the do's and don'ts, we did two, because after we did the first one, I'm like, wait, I tried to take like
yeah,
25 years of, well, it wasn't 25 years at that point, of what I've learned. And one is, don't even listen to me. At the end, I said, don't even listen to me. Do your own research. But
right,
they're really good,
right.
because there's somebody went to take a product the other day and I go, wait a minute, isn't there Cabernet in that? And she said, yes. I'm like, I mean, isn't there phenobut in it? Because it was Cabernet. I'm like, no benzo person should take anything with phenobut in it.
Mm,
I've had people contact me and say it was as bad as coming off of benzo. They had to get off of it. So there are some warnings in there.
right,
So I say, this is, do this, but don't do that. I think everybody should listen to those. And the stories I think are very uplifting. They're very
right,
good.
right. Awesome. Very
So
cool.
we're on YouTube and whatever podcast. Again, I'm not good technologically wise, but for now,
Yeah,
I mean, I am over Coheal. If they see As Prescribed, I'm in the As Prescribed documentary. You can see what
yeah.
we've been trying to do here in Massachusetts. Not with we're going to be doing it again. We haven't passed, so we'll keep going.
That's great. I'll post a bunch of links and everything in the comments and in the description for everyone too. And one thing I have coming up this next year that I shot a feature film, so that's coming out soon. I can't wait.
Oh, it's going to come out. Oh, good. I
Yeah,
saw
yeah.
the preview. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's coming. That's really close. And I really think we nailed it, knock on wood. That was crazy. That was a year long. Just
Wow.
shooting it was a year long, and it was so intense. It was the most intense project, film wise, I've ever been a part of.
I don't know where you find
There's
the time between coaching and all this stuff. It's a lot.
I'm just obsessed, and
Yeah.
but I'm getting close. I really need to finish all this stuff, and I need to take a vacation. Really, I'm starting to feel it on both ends now, but that was a year, and I have a good team, and it's just passion. I just like somebody needs. I just felt like it needed it. We need something to
Right.
come out and to validate it. And I thought,
Right.
documentaries are great, and I want to do a documentary, but I also thought
Yeah.
like when you watch a movie, like I watch a movie about Vietnam. I've never been to Vietnam, and I wasn't in war or even in the military. But when I watch like a certain film, like Full Metal Jacket from Kubrick or something, right? And you start to get a sense of like what it was, because you start to empathize with the protagonists and you see them going through this world. And no matter what your thoughts were on war, the soldiers, or any of that, you come out of it a different place because you've gone through this journey. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool to do that with benzos? Like to have, and not just for the people. So I made this film, of course, for us, but I also really a lot of the times was thinking at least equally about the family, the friends, the doctors, right? So like they have characters in there who are the typical, pull yourself up by your straps, walk it off. What are you doing? Take the damn meds, all of that stuff, because I want that
Yeah.
to echo, and I want the people that feel that to watch it and go, yeah, he sounds rational, right? The doctor sounds rational, and then bring them into that. and hopefully by the end of the journey they empathize with this lead, this lead actress, this protagonist, and they go, wow, okay, now I actually had a taste of what this person, I've watched them crawl through this in over this 1 hour and a half or 2 hour
Mhm.
process. So, and it was just an emotional roller coaster, and the actress is so damn good, and she was so sympathetic to this, and she had experiences with mental health and anxiety, and I mean we had this whole meeting before, when I was casting, and she said, I relate to this so much that I actually need to talk to my therapist to see if it's okay for me to do this.
Wow.
And I immediately goes, that's who I want. But I said, listen, I will protect you as much as I can on this journey, like I
Right.
will totally try to protect you on this. But now I really want you to do it, because I want you to have heart, and who better? And so she
Yeah.
killed it. She's
Good.
amazing, this
I
actress.
can't wait. Yeah, that is going to be
She killed
exciting.
it. So,
You know, the
and
one thing with Dave with Coheal Me is what I like is there's a Sunday night, like, Zoom that we do. And I tell them the first thing, it's a safe place. We're just having conversation, and it's not going to be a fear mongering place. So I think
yeah,
anything I do, I want it to be what I would have wanted, like from
right,
the very beginning, what we wanted.
right.
So but again, I'll be taking a break for a while. I'll do a little bit once my daughter has the
Yeah,
baby, but we'll see. I don't want to over put too much pressure on myself, and
right.
that's why I like that Sunday kind of casual,
Hmm.
come on and talk, and I would like to bring in a guest like we did this past week. So just like when I do a podcast, you can actually talk to the person that I helped, that got
Yeah,
through it,
yeah,
so
that's
which gives you
brilliant.
that opportunity to actually talk to her or him. So
Right.
we'll see how it goes. I think
That's
it'll
great.
be a really good place for people to go.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you're getting into the coaching thing, because I think you'd be excellent.
Yeah,
And-
I've always shied away from it.
yeah,
I've always shied away. I felt like somebody was there to help me before, and I just, I felt
yeah,
like I don't have the 100% answer. I can
right.
help get you there so you have your answer, but yeah, we're trying it for right
Yeah,
now and see how busy my life gets.
right. Yeah, but you have a presence, you have experience, you have knowledge, and you're positive, and I think you have more answers than than 99% of what's out there right now. And even if
Yeah,
just people talk to you and they feel connected and uplifted in hope, then that may be what saves them at the end of the day. You know what I
right,
mean? So that's enough.
right,
So,
right.
all
Thank
right.
you.
Well, I'm going to let you go
All right.
get dinner, and I need to
Yeah,
eat.
my husband's anxiously awaiting for dinner. I can hear him walking back and forth. It's like
I'm
you got to
sorry.
feed him, you
I know
know.
I kept you long,
All
but
right,
we'll talk again soon,
all
for
right.
sure.
Thank
So
you.
thank you
All
so
right,
much.
Dave.
All right,
Bye.
bye.